Hello, guys, and welcome to the grand finals of the King's Cup 2 tournament. This started over a month ago at this point, and we worked through 3 weeks of round robin, three completely different formats. Um, it's been 60 different decks up until this point uh, that have been played, and we have ended with our two finalists here, Baron Von Glower and Innocent Bubbles. And to join me to help cover the casting of the grand finals is none other than Gardner. So if you've watched any of these streams before, you've likely seen Gardner. And if you watch any cards streams, you'd likely see Gardner, because Bear is a very active cards streamer on Twitch, also very active cards YouTuber over on YouTube. And if you've seen the sort of promo video that I released for particularly the grand finals, where Bear and I went over all of the decks in great detail. All of the links to Bear's YouTube and Twitch can be found in the description of that video as well, so go check that out if you haven't already after the stream to get our analysis on the decks, as well as to find Bear. So, Bear, how are you doing? Are you excited? Yeah, let's just take a look at the leaderboard to show some of what you're talking about here. We see this is the end result after the 3 weeks, with Innocent Bubbles on top, followed by Baron Von Glower. Those are our two finalists, both of them with their 2 match wins. Bodo Burrito and Killswitch both picking up only 1 match win. However, this was not just based on match wins, this was based on the win-loss difference, with the match win then counting for an extra point on top of that. So actually, Baron Von Glower and Bodo Burrito tied for win-loss difference, because Bodo Burrito won 1 more game than Baron, and Baron won 1 more set or match than Bodo. However, when they played against each other, Baron came out on top, and that is the tiebreaker that determines it. And then if you look at Innocent Bubbles up there, a 5-point difference, winning 11 out of his 19 games, winning 2 out of his 3 sets. Very, very dominant fashion, and it looks like Bubbles just dominated this, but if you looked at the leaderboard after week 2, Baron was on top, having won both of his previous sets, and Innocent Bubbles was sort of down there fighting to make it into the finals. And then week 3 came along, and Innocent Bubbles absolutely demolished Baron in our only 4-1, which is the most one-sided set we have seen across all 3 weeks. And that has turned the standings on their head, making a Innocent Bubbles Baron final, and Baron is going to be here to try to avenge that quite devastating loss in the 3rd week. And also, if any player went 3-0, they got an extra bonus in the finals, so it's, even though Baron still gets to play in the finals either way, it did cost him an extra round by losing to Innocent Bubbles here, so he's going to have a chip on the shoulder, perhaps, about that loss, and he's going to be here to bounce back. And Innocent Bubbles is here to say, you know what, I absolutely crushed you once, I'm here to absolutely crush you again. So yeah, these are your standings from the previous week, but standings at this point don't really tell the story, because we are going into the grand finals. There's no longer any round robin. This is best of 9, 5 decks, no bans, and of course, as in every single format in this tournament, you are not allowed running cards from multiple decks. So what this means is, if a card shows up in any deck, whether it's major or minor, that card, regardless of number of copies, regardless of rarity, cannot show up in any of your other decks. And that is the only restriction on what nations you can bring. So you could actually bring multiple of the same nation, as long as they don't bring any of the same cards. So we've seen players take that rule in multiple different directions. And then for the grand finals, we've done Pauper, we've done Classic, we've done Odds and Evens. For the grand finals, it is standard. So this is going to be the decks that you are most likely to see in other tournaments, the decks you are most likely to be able to play on ladder or see on ladder. These are the decks that, for you, the audience, are the most useful. However, this is not just going to be your regular cards OCC tournament, where you see Jagro, you see US Frontline, and you see German US mid-range. Because of the the card restrictions on the decks, this is going to be 5 very different decks. Our players had to think quite a lot on constructing their lineups around these restrictions. Okay, well, we'll quickly figure out these audio issues. Alrighty, guys. Sorry about that. We have fixed it. Windows decided to start sending all audio other than Discord audio to my monitor, which does not have any ability to output audio.
Also known as Windows hates me. Like, Microsoft does not want my voice being heard by the masses. Hello, Chad.
All right.
Next person that types "I can't hear you" is getting murdered because it's been a day. Woohoo! We're on. Right. Anyway, excitement.
All right. So, anyways, talking about the format, I already went over this, but Bear, I know you had something you wanted to say.
Just legitimately keep your eyes open, chat, for the creativity in the deck building. It's been really fascinating to see. It's going to be interesting to see how they get around the restrictions that they've had. And if you go watch the video, you'll see that we both are of the opinion that they came up with some very creative solutions and some really fascinating decks.
All right. Well, now let's get into the player cards here real quick. I mean, we're all familiar with these players, but just in case any of you are new, or you only watched the Birdo Burrito with the Kill Switch games, well, here we have Baron von Glower, the least tournament experienced out of all of our players, but again, dominated the first 2 weeks, made it here to the grand finals, really thriving in sort of these alternate formats, where perhaps Baron might have more deck building experience than these players who have more competitive tournament experience. However, the grand finals is a standard, so we will have to see if that deck building experience is still going to lend itself to this format, where there's a bit more normalcy for players who might have less deck building experience. They can just play more meta decks, quote unquote. And his opponent here in the finals is none other than Innocent Bubbles, who has 10 OCC appearances. He has won the OCC, 50% game win rate against the best of the best across 10 OCCs, across several years of cards, several different metas, expansion cycles, etc. So Bubbles, absolute competitive beast at this game, absolutely destroyed Baron in their last matchup, so it's going to be real fun to see if he can do it again, if Baron is going to bounce back. We did see Bubbles struggle in the earlier stages of this tournament, so he's certainly not like the heavy favorite or anything like that. However, recency does say it's leaning towards going to Bubbles. Bear, what do you have to say about our players here?
It's so hard to sum these guys up because, one, I love them both and they know I do, but also, two, these two guys are, for me, in some ways, the diametrically opposed players. Like, Bubbles defines the word veteran in many respects. He's seen so much of this game for so long. And I know Baron has too, but Bubbles' win rate, consistently 10 OCC appearances, is insane. But Baron's got that creative deck building thing going on, and I don't think I've met many better straight up engine / OTK players than Baron in my life. But at the same time, I don't know that Bubbles has ever, struggled for the ability to just consistently play the deck that's in front of them. So, I mean, this is going to be tight. I do not expect this to be a blowout, and if it is, it will be something interesting to see. These two got history. If you're a form book fan, yes, Bubbles did win the last one, but at the same time, consistency-wise, Baron has seen his way through the whole of this tournament, with Bubbles being the only exception, with true kind of grit and determination. So I am very excited. Plus, there are some interesting deck matchups.
And speaking of those decks, we spent nearly 2 hours going into all of these decks in a YouTube video up on my channel that was released almost a week ago, so you should go check it out there, and all of Bear's links are in that description as well, so you should go check out Bear after you finish checking out that video. And we're not going to rehash all of that. If you've seen it, you know what we have to say about the decks. If you haven't seen it, well, you're going to find out as we watch the games what we think of these decks. So we're not going to go through that. However, in case anybody missed it, we will just very quickly run through the decks to give a most basic one or two sentence definition of the deck. So let's start with Baron's decks. First up, we have a German Japan, pretty aggressive mid-range list here, relying on a bunch of plane synergy and some fast units to try to just go under a lot of decks while still being able to have a bit more value than, say, something like Jaguar.
100%.
Then he has a Japan Soviet Shiden OTK with a self-credit denial engine, so he's just going to try to control the board, slow down the board, stall out every unit his opponent plays on the board until he can use one roofs to gain a ton of credits and then kill his opponent in one turn with Shiden and final pushes. Then he has a Britain-Poland exile, and this is a pretty straightforward exile. If you look closely at the list, there will be a few standout exceptions of interesting tech choices in the deck, and a lot of this has to do because he also brought Britain USA Air, and managed to not have any duplicate cards across these two decks, which took some finagling with the lists, so there is some slight imperfections in how people might normally build the lists, if you look quite closely, but both of them together form a very, very formidable two decks out of your 5-deck lineup that your opponent might not necessarily have been expecting. And then last but not least from Baron, he has a Soviet Britain push OTK. It's push OTK. You know what cards are in this deck. It's gonna try to stall you down until it kills you with Red Dawn, push, or Great Patriotic War. If you healed up, or if you brought Baron down low. So those are Baron's decks. Very, very solid lineup. There's not really any weak decks per se that like stand out. And
couple of maybe minor matchup concerns, but we'll see what Bubbles lists are.
And here we have Bubbles' first list. It is a US-German frontline, just a very standard US-German frontline. Few cards in here that are going to serve him well, like Stars and Stripes into those two air decks from Baron. But yeah, it's frontline. If you've played this game for any amount of time, you know frontline.
Yeah, if you don't, you haven't been here long enough.
Then we have a Japan Soviet aggro. This deck I'm very excited to see. It's the Jagro package, but then there's a few interesting things in here, like the 2 copies of Respite to combo with the 2 Kagashimas and the 2 Chiros, just to have that like anti-healing tech, to get the AoE buff from Respite without necessarily giving your opponent the healing out of it, and then some Goshikin on the top end. A very interesting deck, definitely a bit spicy. Then we see Britain USA Air. However, if you look at the actual cards in the deck, there is some pretty meaningful differences between this deck and Baron's Britain USA Air. We're not going to get into those now because we're trying to power through the decks to get into the games. That's what you're here for. That's what the players are waiting for us.
9 matches, guys. 9, potentially.
Then we have the big question mark in Bubbles' lineup. It is German Italy Alpine. If you want to know our full opinions on this deck, watch the video. Quite entertaining.
It's either genius or it's madness.
Yeah. TLDR,
we don't know.
We think this is the weakest deck in his lineup, and it could be the deck that costs him the finals. However, it's Alpine, so it's absolutely capable of beating any deck very early on if it just gets a good start that the opponent can't answer, because Alpine just likes to play down unit after unit after unit and snowball with the Alpine keyword. And last but not least, Innocent Bubbles, his Soviet deck. It is Soviet Japan self-damage. Very, very solid deck. I really like the way he's built it. A lot of tanks. Some burst potential with the counter-offensive and the SU-100. On top of just the pretty standard self-damage core, with the one noticeable exception being that this deck has 0 healing in it, which is quite abnormal for self-damage. We will see if it pays off, or if you will end up regretting that decision. But that is the decks. Okay, we have blitzed through the decks. We're on to...
Sorry, I just saw Bubbles comment in chat. Alpine is what happens when you make me bring 5.
Alright, so we have made it through the decks. We are here on this screen, and this time around, there's not going to be any red X's because there are no bans. So before we get into the games, just a bit of housekeeping. 1 exclamation mark giveaway in the chat to join the giveaway. You only have to do it once. If you did it before we took the stream down, you don't have to do it again. The giveaway is running in a separate program, separate from the stream. And if you think you might have entered, it doesn't hurt to enter again. So exclamation mark giveaway. And those will be being pulled throughout the entire stream. We have a lot of giveaway codes to get through. To be precise, there is 14 150 gold codes and 5 300 gold codes, and all of those will be given away by the end of this stream, so you have a very good chance of winning, so why not? Exclamation mark a giveaway in the chat. If at any point you want to see the deck lists cross-referenced, follow along as we play, or watch these players play, I should say, exclamation mark deck lists in the chat will pull up the deck lists for the grand finals, as well as the deck lists for the 3 previous weeks, for your reference, whether now or later. And there is a slight possibility that the stream might go down at some point. I've been having some computer issues. If that happens, the stream will be up within a minute or two. So don't worry too much about that. Hopefully it doesn't happen. Fingers crossed, but you never know. And with that being said, let's start pulling some giveaways. So let's start
Absolutely.
with a couple 150 gold giveaways. Just get things warmed up a little. So our first giveaway winner will be Laser Wars. Congratulations, Laser Wars. Followed by Barndar. So Laser Wars and Barndar, congratulations. You are our first giveaway winners for this stream. And I'm sure there will be plenty to follow. Let's let the players know that we are almost ready for them to start. We just have to go through spectator mode. Now, I asked you this in the video, but a lot of people missed that. Bear, what are your expectations? What are your predictions for this finals? Who do you think is going to win it? Have your opinions
Yep.
changed?
No, I mean I'm going to stick to my guns. So first and foremost, I preface this with nothing has been super predictable in this tournament, and I've had as much wrong as I've had right. But based purely on the decks and the situation, I have Baron taking this 5-3. But please don't bet your house on it, chat, because this could go a long way. But I think Baron 5-3 would be my bet based on the decks.
All right. Well, I was gonna say Baron 5-3. Then I would say Baron 5-3 now. And to be different, I will say Baron 5-4. I struggle to see Bubbles failing to win at least 3 games. However, anything can happen. We saw Bubbles take a very commanding 3-0 lead in these players' last matchups, and it wasn't necessarily because it was all favorable decks. It wasn't because Baron's lineup sucked or anything like that. Just sometimes when you have 3 essentially 50-50 matchups, players of equal strength who are going to be essentially a 50-50 on who wins by the end of the game, then hitting heads 3 times on 3 coin tosses is not that unlikely. So yeah,
Absolutely.
anything could happen. And also at the end of the day, even in a best of 9, the end score line does not necessarily reflect the player strength or the lineup strength. Anything can happen. Upsets can happen. However, this is definitely the most competitive finals that we've really seen, by just having the most possible games. Variance will work itself out. That's something I've loved to see throughout this tournament, is just the number of times you see a player lose 2 very unlucky games in a row at the start of a set, go down 2-0. And if that's a best of 3, that set's just over. That player's just won. And then every single time, without fail, they go down 2-0, and then the next player brings it back to 2-2, and then it goes 3-2, 3-3, and then somebody wins in game 7. These players are incredibly well matched, and the more games you have, the more nuance that you're going to be able to get into in the slight differences in lineups and play on the day, that can really, let the best player win. And in any competitive game, that's what you want at the end of the day. You want the best player to win any game that you play. And that's what we are going to be here today to see which of these finalists is the best player in this whole series of wacky formats that we've had in the King's Cup here.
100%. Yeah, I mean this tournament has been the most competitive tournament I have currently seen in cards from a purely evening out perspective because we've had the luxury of being able to do best of sevens and best of nines. This legitimately could not be more even. These players are unbelievably skilled, and you guys are in for a treat right now, guys. Folks, this is going to be amazing.
And while we're just waiting for the players to get set up, spectator mode to start working, um, we will do another giveaway. So exclamation mark giveaway in chat if you haven't already. Um, all right. For a second, I thought were having more audio issues, but
You and me both.
that is not the case. Um, let's draw another giveaway winner, and it is going to be King Javi 98. Also, I forgot to mention, or forgot to announce a Barndar winning earlier, but that was from earlier. King Javi, that is a 150 gold code that I will be sending you at the end of the stream, and that goes to everybody. The codes will be sent out at the end of the stream. And it looks like our players are just about ready to get started.
Much love to the players too, after our faithful promise to start at 5 o'clock and then Peck hating us. So
It beats our usual promise to start at 5 o'clock and then starting at like 5:45. Yeah, our
hey, we're
players have
a
been
half hour
incredibly
early. Call it a
patient.
win.
And just have to get spectator mode reset up. Um, yeah, Baron was
I mean,
Baron was so ready he was winning games on ladder.
I'm saying nothing. I'm saying absolutely nothing.
All right.
Oh, Maudie, thank you for the raid.
Oh,
Here we go.
thank you very much for the raid, Maudi, or also known as Esmtesm. Here we go in game one of the grand finals. It is going to be Baron on the bottom of your screen on the Japan-Soviet Shiden OTK. And on the top of your screen, it looks like Innocent Bubbles is starting off with his US-German frontline. I mean, in terms of just general familiarity, how popular the decks are, how standard and well tested the decks are. Frontline definitely should be the favorite. However, Frontline, if you don't find your Blitzkrieg, it can struggle to end the game quickly, and you're going to want to end the game quickly because the Shiden OTK deck will be able to kill Frontline from 20 if
Yeah,
given enough time and resources.
you can't give it time. Baron's just looking to find his draw and get the cards he needs. Bubbles has pulled a decent hand on the mulligan, though. He's got some of the tools that he'd like to see, but he's still got to keep pace on this. Meanwhile, Baron will start out almost certainly just looking to tempo out and draw when possible. Um,
Yeah, Bubbles. Frontline always has this very slow feeling starts compared to other decks. The one exception is if you get like a 164th and then a
yeah.
99th on two. However, all these cards that he's played have one operation cost, so they're just going to sit back. The PIR, though, is quite good because it is just going to keep growing and growing and growing. And
Mm.
if these Jaegers start getting to the front line, it can buff the Jaegers to potentially trade with Kurame.
Yeah, I mean the big thing here obviously is going to be you need to manage your resources well enough to make sure you get the best turn possible you can before you hit the Kurume wall. Because for those of you who don't know, Kurume, as soon as you destroy it, ends the turn. Baron seeing the Cav here is going to make him happy, though. This is good because it's going to start getting the discounts on the orders and thing and draw that he wants to play in his deck, which can be huge. And he's able to play that out from behind a Kurume. So Bubbles needs to find some answers. I saw him lifting the 99th and wondering, can he make use of a buff in the front? Is going to be interesting. The Sherman's nice to see, but do you really want to draw right now? Or do you want to be trying to get some frontline presence?
Yeah,
Bubbles has gone for the draw.
I think he's looking for this M10 to suppress either the Kurume or more likely the 40th Cavalry just to stop that discount from coming out. Um,
Yeah, 100%. We might be about to see one of the most efficient draw engines in the game, though, because Baron's got Sally in hand, and Sally is an incredibly effective draw engine as long as you've got something like Lesser of Two Evils that lets you discard a card.
I kind of want to see Baron go for Lesser of Two Evils on the Sally this turn, and then just play Final Push.
Yeah.
You have enough in the deck that you could sacrifice them. Frontline's not going to be healing, so you don't need like triple Final
No,
Push
I'm
on Sheedan.
100% with you because you can draw up that hand, use Final Push to get that discount. I it, Obviously what J King means is pop Final Push onto his own cavalry, which will of course pop and discount everything in his hand. But he's going to honorable death, which I do get. Just make Bubbles have to work even harder. Bubbles doesn't have a lot of reach. Frontline is not a reach deck. A lot of its bigger infantry are going to have to come forward slowly. Baron, thinking about it, I think this is a solid play. I still kind of would have liked to have seen the final push,
Yeah.
but doing this is much the same effect. That cavalry now, Bubbles is basically being told, unless he manages to find an M10A1, that he's going to have to actually give Baron the discount. Nothing he can do about it. Can't let it sit there. Because please remember, Bubbles does not have any way of healing his HQ.
Yeah.
Um,
And you do not want to see the 8 discount on. Oh, yeah, discounting for 8. Like, discounting for 1 on 8 cards in hand. Sheedan was not overdrawn there, fortunately for Baron. However, suddenly there's an
I mean,
8
that
attack
discount.
PIR.
Yeah, I mean, it's never nothing when you see it. However, if you drop the Karumi, you right now Bubbles would have an expensive removal. His only choice would be to push forward and trade the Sherman. Or I suppose he could 99th onto it. Another cavalry coming down. Bubbles is not going to like seeing that. Um,
There is the second half track in the hand of Innocent Bubbles, and
would get
this
8 damage to HQ, which is not nothing, but I'm kind of thinking you want to hold that for a chance when you can do just a bit more. Just looking at Bubbles, I mean, he's got Blitzkrieg, which is always nice to see.
yeah, he's 2 credits off lethal this turn.
He is. I had it at 3, but you are correct, it's 2.
He
Apparently, I'm
bounces
a
the
little slow today.
40th, so that's going to prevent Baron from being able to get the discount. He will be able to deny himself the credit again. However, doesn't mean a lot. He
I mean, you say it doesn't, but we have to remember Baron has got a final push in hand and he has got more in deck. So if he really wants to see the discount, he can just pop the cavalry and pull the same trick, only this time for free. Um,
he has the one of desperate measures, the one cost one of desperate measures in the deck
measures.
that he can play out alongside the 40th cavalry to prevent immediately dying to Blitzkrieg. Um,
Yeah.
he could also underfire for a turn, but that doesn't really accomplish much because you're not doing much
No,
else with
I
that turn.
like desperate measures. Just to give him that ability to avoid it because he knows Blitzkrieg's a threat and he knows the deal. Baron knows all he has to do is stall because eventually he is gonna find his tools. Um,
It looks like
Thinking
he's
about
thinking about Sally. I think the idea
Sally, yeah,
is if he plays the 40th, he's seen both half tracks, but if he plays the
yeah,
40th and it gets M10'd, he's on 2 credit slots.
yeah, which you don't want. So I kind of like the Sally. The Sally is also something that Bubbles kind of has to answer because you don't want, you really can't afford to let Baron be just pinging five. Because lest we forget, this deck does not have to OTK you. If it can chip you away, it's got plenty of ways to finish you off. I mean, honestly, if Bubbles doesn't do something, I don't know. He's got it. I was going to say, if Bubbles did let it sit, I wouldn't have necessarily minded final push onto the Sally just to really put the pressure on. But right now, Baron's kind of going to want to be seeing a guard or some form of stall. I mean, he has obviously got pin. Um,
Stand Together
Stand
lets him
together.
immediately discount his hand. However, he would not have the credits to play Commit the Reserves on the Sherman. As in, he wouldn't have the credit slots. He would have the credits to play Commit the Reserves. Um, Under Fire will just buy him a turn.
Which, to be honest, I mean, is kind of what this deck does. Buying a turn is often enough with this deck, depending on what you draw. But I mean, Baron is not seeing a lot of his draw engine right now. Um, Grand plans and or any other form of discard would be something he'd love to see right now. To Pock with the Sally that he's got. Bubbles is kind of showing a very aggressive front here, and Baron is okay. So he can go digging, but he's kind of got to answer a number of threats
Well,
right
this
now.
one roof is for 8, so Baron recognizes that he's probably dead if he doesn't go off this turn, so
Yep.
he starts going off
He's
as
just
quickly as
gonna, yeah.
possible, and
There you
praying that
go,
he finds it.
Sally. As I warned in the review video, you will probably see things flying across the screen at great speed because Baron knows this deck well enough. Oh, there's a final push, which
I
is
think
not
he
a he's got
needs to take Great Expanse to regain his
ants
credit
though.
slots
Yeah,
on the following turn.
I
And he
think he
has the
does.
credits to Great Expanse and Snowstorm, which will keep him alive for one turn.
Yeah. So if he can just snowstorm out, slow everything down, and give himself that position, he can buy himself the time. Because he has got a lot of damage in hand. There's the snowstorm. Uh,
And I
which
believe
he,
if he... Oh, he'll even get the buff on the guard, too.
yep, he will.
I believe one roof top deck is lethal. Um,
Yep,
yeah,
I
that will
think you are correct.
plus 8. It's plus, yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's plus 8 credits at this point, right? Maybe even plus 10. Because he got an air, land, and sea in there.
He
And
did get an 8
10
air land and
additional
sea, so yeah,
credits.
yeah. So it'd be 10 additional credits if he can top deck it, which would be huge.
He could
Plus, he
even
can
go for,
technically go digging with lesser.
yeah, he can even
Um,
lesser into an air, land, and sea,
see.
or a great, or a grand plan on the 40th. Um,
Yeah.
it's,
So,
and he doesn't need to do any of that. He's
oh,
just gonna find it immediately. Um,
yeah. Oh, okay, so we might be about to see, chat, a truly, truly beautiful engine pop off. Oh, this is gonna sting.
yeah, he needs to just. He has a. Oh,
So,
I guess he was 2 damage off lethal before finding the Great Expanse. I believe he has the credits. To go for this turn.
I think so.
Oh, he finds another final push.
That helps. Lesser of two
All he needs to do is
equals.
stand together as 40th, and he has the credits to do everything.
Yeah.
Baron might be in the
Does he
process of
see it
messing
though?
up his own combo here. Uh,
Yeah. He's holding. Oh, oh.
he gets the guaranteed one roof for 14, and that is going to let him
Tarugi's.
close out the game. So,
Yeah, here we go. Oh, I thought for a minute it had gone, but we are there.
unless he runs out of time to get off the second attack,
Yeah,
which he does not,
he doesn't.
and that is going to
Oof.
be a 1-0 victory, or 1-0 lead for Baron. Showing that, this time we're not going to see a sweep, no scares of a sweep from Bubbles here this time around. It is going to
Yep.
be a 1-0 lead for Baron after game 1, winning on the Japan-Soviet Shiden OTK. And I'm not going to lie, I felt some nerves in that game. I don't know
Yeah,
if it's the deck or if it's just the first game of the finals. But definitely felt some nerves from Baron in his play, but he did get there in the end.
he found his way there for a brief moment. I think both of us thought he'd pitched it away, but he got there. And I mean, sometimes, honestly, psychologically, that's all you need is that one game where you do get the nerves out of the way. And in some ways, if you have got nerves and you get it out of the way on one of your more complicated and pressure decks under a turn that is that time pressured, that can be hugely nerve settling. It can be a big confidence boost.
Yeah,
Bubbles, I think, won't be too phased, to be fair, though. He has his frontline deck is good for a win. It just is. It's frontline. It will do frontline things. This probably wasn't its favoured matchup, to be honest. I mean, it's not I wouldn't say it's a guarantee, but I'd say there's at least a 70% chance that you lose that game because you're not usually, unless you get a very early Blitzkrieg, you're not usually in a position to punch Sheed OTK fast enough if the player knows what they're doing, and we all know how good Baron is on these decks.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're Baron, you're feeling that like you have a slight advantage on the decks. So as long as you're winning those like the 50-50 matchups, just things are going slightly in your way. You feel that later down the line, once Bubbles has to bring out what we think are his weakest decks, like the Alpine deck, that Baron is going to have the advantage later down the line. So if he's winning these 50-50s early, that's definitely very good for Baron's overall chances of winning. Obviously, winning any game is going to increase your chances of
Yeah.
winning the tournament, but I
Oh,
think Baron
yeah.
is going to be much more relieved to be getting these wins out of the way early. Um,
I would agree. I do have to ask you though, in Bubbles' place, because I'm thinking I might do. Do you maybe consider pitching Alpine out for the next one? You know it's probably your weakest deck, and you know the psychological effect that you could get if you can pull that win. Do you think about just getting it out of the way? Because at worst, all right, you drop another one and you've got to go back to frontline. But
I think I would. I think I would bring Frontline again. I don't think he's far enough down where he needs to start thinking about like needing to bring out his weaker decks to like inflict psychological damage. This is unlike all of the previous rounds of this tournament. The players don't need to worry about winning as many games as possible. This is just winner takes all grand finals. So if Bubbles were to go down 4-0, hypothetically, at that point, there's no reason not to just bring your weakest deck first. And you know, if you can't get over the line with that, you can't get over the line at all. So might as well start with that. However, he's down 1-0 in a best of 9. So I do think at this point he should just bring frontline and try to keep that Alpine back until after the air decks have got their wins.
that's fair.
Because I'm thinking at this point there's a 50% chance Baron comes in with an air deck, and if I'm playing Alpine into air, I'm not having a good time.
No,
Um,
it's not a good day. That is very true.
let's do a fourth giveaway here before we get into game two. Another 150 gold giveaway! Exclamation mark a giveaway in chat to enter if you haven't already. And the winner is Ocaranza Juan Bautista. Um, Congratulations on the 150 gold. I will let the players now. Um, well, I say that. It's been a while. I need to get spectator mode set up first, and then I will let the players know. If you're Baron, what decks do you think Baron brings? Or what deck do you think Baron brings to the next round?
If it was me, I think I would probably pop Exile Air and just go for that because it's got some very strong matchups into most of what Bubbles has with him. And also, Exile doesn't mind playing into frontline. And as you say, there is that psychological thing of does Bubbles stick with the consistency of frontline? I would not be surprised to see Exile. I wouldn't be hugely surprised though if Baron decided to just throw us all off and bring his second OTK deck and just see if he can ping it out the way now that he's got a win under it. But for me, I would bring Exile.
Yeah. I also think there's a benefit of just winning the second game as quickly as possible.
Hmm.
Just because, you know, that one was a pretty close game. Both players felt like they had good chances of winning up until the end. Um, and if you get a slight, like, you edge out a very tough victory like that, and then you can just absolutely crush your opponent on, like, turn 5 with Exile, that's the mental damage coming
Yeah,
in.
I mean that gives you the swagger in your step. To be able to say, yeah, I rip through you very quickly. Plus, Exile is a very consistent deck, which you can believe that you can stick on for a couple of matches if you need to, and you know it's probably good for the win.
All right.
So
Our,
we've been surprised before.
our players are getting into game 2 here. Um, They've gotten some water. They're sitting down, ready to go. This is going to be a long set for them. I mean, it's going to be a long set for everybody, but remember, it's so much easier to just watch a tournament than it is to cast a tournament, and it's so much easier to cast a tournament than it is to play
Yeah,
in that tournament.
yeah.
um,
I prefer my seat to their seat, and chat seat to my seat right now. Uh,
all right, here we go, and Baron is going to be bringing the second OTK deck. He's just getting those OTK decks out
oh,
of the
he
way.
might do it.
This is not the matchup
So,
he wants, however. We see the
no, it really isn't. This is
Japan
not where he
Soviet
wanted this to
aggro
go.
with the
Yeah.
60th Cavalry Regiment already in the hand of
In
Innocent Bubbles.
hand. Yeah. This is not going to, I think, land quite the way Baron was hoping it was. I do understand his logic. It's classic Baron, but I think Bubbles might have actually read that with his choice of deck.
The second 60th Cavalry pickup, Shibata on turn
Oh,
1.
oh, this is going to be fun. All right.
And the fact that they have their effects don't stack at all, so there's never a reason to play a second one on the board. So Baron's going to have to
No,
remove one, which is not easy at all for his deck. And then once he does that, a
no.
second one will immediately come down onto the board. And that entire time, he's going to be greatly restricted. The good thing is that the
Yeah.
Soviet version is a bit more unit heavy than the British version. The way the British version is typically built for push OTK. So that means that Baron's not going to be too affected by the 60th Cavalry if it comes down early. It's going to absolutely shut down any ability for him to combo off, but
Hmm.
it's not going to necessarily cause the biggest issues immediately compared to this Shibata. This Shibata is absolutely going to tear through Baron's health if it can't
Yeah,
be
I
removed.
mean, it's sat there, and as has been talked about, it's doing its job when it. I mean, this is the thing that Shibata is designed to do is counter decks that are hard order like this. So Baron will have to find a way around it, but at the same time, he's got to be a bit cautious. He knows the threats that are there. I also, seeing Audacity that early doesn't make you happy playing Baron's deck because he doesn't have a lot of great answers to bombers either.
And this early respite gonna come out, bring back the 60th Cavalry from 1 health. Shibata goes to
Yeah.
6 health. Baron is essentially in top deck Depth of Winter territory. Um,
Yeah,
I think you just
I
have to
mean
buy
this.
the sword for it at this point, because this
Yeah,
Archer is gonna tear through your guards.
yeah, I don't. I mean, I understand kind of the X wanting the extra HQ defense, but I really think you got to start drawing. Also, there's so many options for just punishing you for trying to trade. I mean, we see Signal Regiment in hand if Bubbles wants to use it, but right now he can afford to be quite aggressive. That Type 93 might come into play later as well, because Type 93, when you've already got a 4/5 Aichi on board, is not nothing. Also, Baron really doesn't want to see the Chiro come down either. This is not a good place if you're Baron. Uh,
Baron looks like he's just gonna try setting up the.
oh, yeah, I don't know if I'm.
He's setting
I
up
mean,
the
he doesn't
Winter
have a.
Warfare next turn to take out 60th
Yeah,
Cavalry, but that sickle dealt 5 damage,
damage.
and
Yeah,
now he has to float 5 credits,
but
and it
it's
gives the IG the trade on the Glamour Boys. And the
it's
third Shibata pickup
yeah,
from Bubbles.
and there goes the 93rd. Here we go. This is. I mean, it's not automatically over because Baron's got lots of stuff in hand, but I think he almost certainly has to buy the sword here, right? I mean,
I mean, he has to start with Winter Warfare.
yeah,
This National Fire Service can buy him some time, and he has Great Patriotic War in hand. So he doesn't need to be on the 12 health to go off. The issue is he's not close to comboing, but he's also out of great stall tools in hand. Other than this National Fire Service. So I think you have to start with the Winter Warfare. I guess
yeah,
he's probably just thinking about if he wants to buy the sword after that. It will still draw 3. The problem is it's going to also take another 4. If you enemy contact
not.
first, you can't play any more orders.
Yeah, you're taking yourself out of Winter War here.
And if you can't play any other
That yeah.
orders, well,
I was
yeah,
gonna
there you go.
say he's there. It can't have been the right call, but yeah.
Oh,
Enemy contact now. I mean, he's gonna go early on the
he
push.
top decks the Red Dawn off the enemy
Yeah,
contact, and that's just lethal. Oh, but he dies to the Shibatas.
Water. Oh no. Oh, oh.
And I don't know
Okay.
if that's Baron intentionally throwing in the towel because he can't deal with the two Shibatas on board, or if that was Baron
I mean,
missing his health total and hyper focusing on the ability to push OTK's opponent. But either way, that is going to be Bubbles tying up the series very, very rapidly.
oh, oh, okay. Yeah, I really don't know, and I maybe we'll get a chance to ask Baron at some point what happened there. But oh, that's gonna sting.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, all this talk about what deck they're going to bring. Does Bubbles try to bring his weakest deck? Does Baron try to just get like a very fast win? Ends up Bubbles just brings a very good deck, gets a good matchup, and absolutely stomps Baron with what, to be fair to Baron, was a very, very good hand from Innocent Bubbles. Um,
okay, Baron has just confirmed in chat that he was an idiot, so I'm going to assume that he just missed the Shibata, um, which is unfortunate. I mean, it happens, and you've got to get past it in tournaments, but that is a hard pill to swallow.
yeah, that's definitely just like counting the Shibatas. The Shibatas will trigger first, so I think maybe when it said push will deal 14. Um, if he had let go of that, it would have ended up dealing 18.
Yeah.
However, I think Bubbles was on 19 health, if I recall correctly. So, um, it's Baron's saying that there was missed lethal there. I suppose we can go back and check that out at some point. However, what we and the players, Baron included, need to do moving forward is to just focus on the what is upcoming next. Because again, best of nine. This set's going on for a while. And once the series 4-3, you're not going to be thinking about game two anymore. You're going to be thinking about game eight.
I mean,
So
yeah, the other thing to remember is at this point they've gone 1-1, so now this is just best of seven. It's just a reset. And that's how you've got to look at this. You've just got to clear your head. You need to win four of the next games. And that's not gonna happen. I'm sorry, I'm catching chat talking about rigged games. I promise you, there's none of that going on. But there's these. If there was such a thing as a match of the day for this, I'm sure this would be replayed and talked about endlessly by a lot of pundits. Um,
yeah. Baron explaining his missed lethal, which was instead of dealing the 3 damage to himself with the Red Dawn, if he just developed the Red Dawn for 1 cost,
yeah,
then he would be able to push and not take that 3 extra damage. And I mean, spectator mode was kind of difficult to see how much health Baron was at, like what card necessarily killed him. Um, but it does sound like Baron understood what was going on and might have missed lethal, and we'll see if that ends up potentially costing him big in this tournament. If he loses by a single game, if he loses in game 9, he will think back to this set, and what could have been a 2-0 lead will instead be a tied series at 1 apiece.
yep, it's reset time. It's all good though, and I massive props by the way to the players for popping in chat and talking about their own plays and stuff. That takes some brass ones to do. It's not something I would do. I would be focusing quietly in a corner. So chat be loving to all of the players for talking to you.
And you know what? We have 5 300 gold giveaways to give away. Let's pull our first one here. So our first 300 gold giveaway will be going to Dan Civilap. So Dan Civilap, congratulations for earning your 300 gold.
Yeah, congratulations. You've got slightly less than 10% of the massive haul of nearly 4,000 gold that's being flung out today. J King quietly in the corner is in fact the card's dragon, and he's giving up a small portion of his hoard.
All right. Letting the players know that we are ready for them for game 3. And this will be interesting. Does Baron run back the OTK decks? Is he just trying to get those OTK decks out of the way? Or, It's always interesting with a miss lethal, where you're aware you miss lethal. Does that mean you are now more like cognitive of the deck and the combos you're looking for? You're going to pay more attention. You're sort of warmed up for it, or does that mean you should just stay away from that deck for a few games, and just try to reset your mental? I mean, it's hard to say. It really
Yeah,
comes
it's
down to your
so
player
player
different.
dependent. Yeah, I mean, I know for me personally, I would run it straight back. But that it's very dependent on players, and it no, we have a Germany on Germany match, so we're
We
switching it up again.
we do have um
No, wait, no, we don't.
yeah.
There's no way this is legitimate.
So
Spectator mode is helping us out plenty here.
yeah,
Don't worry, chat. It's not what it looks like.
going to pull this back in just a second here. This one is actually a user error, more so than spectator mode error.
Just ended up with the same player twice. It's fine.
All right,
There we go.
and we are into the game. And I will update the scores.
So we've got Bubbles is bringing Brit Air, his slightly modified Brit Air list, and Baron appears to be on his German Japan, kind of aggressive mid-range deck.
And this is a very strong start from Innocent Bubbles. It might be hampered a little bit by the fact that he doesn't really want to play this Swordfish out.
Yeah, that's kind of the big issue at the minute, is you kind of don't want to put it down, but this is going to be like he's definitely got some play. He just needs to get to the credits, and that's the hard part. Meanwhile, I mean, Baron Zarado not doing much right now because
There's a
obviously you need equal or less units, but
there's a great line here for Baron. He could trade the 35T, then a Rado, then
yeah,
out of the mist the 1/1
missed.
Gladiator, and then play the Gladiator to end the turn with a draw off the Orado and two
Yeah,
fighters on the board to stop any bombers. And Baron sees the
yeah,
line.
he sees it. It is a beautiful, beautiful line. I think I was looking at it and thinking, it just feels like such a strong tempo line. Um, Bubble's just going to go for the draw. I mean, to be fair, in his position, I'd probably do the same. I want to have some credits to get some presents on the board.
I'm surprised he went for the
Heinkel's
convoy that quickly. And didn't spend more time thinking about potentially doing Swordfish Shark to take out one of the gladiators, get some units on board.
I like the Arado push up here. I really do. Um, it's so okay. So Bubbles is going to look to buff up. Oh,
There's a breakthrough here that can't quite deal with the board. There's also a
I
suppression,
was
which is
going
a
to say
1/1 stat.
it's not quite the breakthrough you want.
There's also no way to draw with MEBF this turn, or gain the credit here. There's a few ways you're very close to being able to.
Yeah, unfortunately, close and horseshoes and hand grenades. In this case, close isn't gonna cut it for Baron. This is a thinky turn, and Baron is showing that he is thinking about that. I mean, suppression is not a terrible choice. You kind of got to feel though that you'd like to wait until something's been even more heavily buffed, but you don't know what your opponent's holding.
If he's going for the suppression, I feel like he's most likely going to follow up with breakthrough on the shark, and then just hit the swordfish down um,
I mean, it seems
to a
logical, doesn't
1/1.
it?
Just try to leave his opponent with his little stats on board, make his following turns easier. There's the possibility he draws a good card. Jaeger here is an
Yeah,
amazing
Eagle's
card
great.
because it will
Yeah,
both
uh,
draw and get a 1/3 in the front line.
front line. Embargo's a very fast answer. Double embargo is a big flex from Bubbles. That's a substantial bomber.
He picks up Swordfish and Kitty Hawk, and he has the second cast in hand, so he's more than capable of refilling. Baron here no longer the ability to remove any units from board. However, he could just simply push up a Panzergren if he wants. He can double hit, place Restore, also a very strong option. Restore is very difficult for Air to remove.
Yeah, Zastora is not. I mean, there are so many options here for Baron, and he's thinking about what he feels. I kind of do like the big infantry body into the front line. But he can't know that Bubbles has got 500,000 answers, unfortunately, in hand.
Yeah, Bubbles. The Skittycock can't hit the Errado, so the Swordfish has to go into the Errado. However,
Yeah,
double Albacore cast could come out here. Um,
yeah,
and that's exactly what we're going to see.
yeah. It's a strong line because it presents an awful lot of defense that you need to answer. Pack 40 is a great pickup
That
here,
will
though.
allow Baron to remove two of these units from board, including the 4/5 Swordfish. I imagine we're
Yeah,
going to see that.
I mean he has to, right? Um,
I mean, there's a world where he could go for the MEBF and get the draw.
yeah,
He still kills the 4/5 Swordfish.
yeah,
Um, it looks like that's what he's going for.
yeah. I kind of personally would have liked to have seen him take 2 units down. Now this is a harder choice than it looks. But Comet is going to be universally useful in this matchup because Comet is very good for answering bombers. Who knew, given the history of the aircraft? Um,
And now Bubbles is out of pin in hand, and third cast pickup, he can make some big planes, but just there's simply
that's
too
a
much.
lot of damage in the front line right now. I mean, Bubbles kind of has to start looking to clean up. Obviously, he's going to remove the Panzer Grenadiers. Um, ooh, okay. Um,
Yeah, there's a few options here. Um,
yeah, this is not an insty one. I mean, obviously, Jaeger straight into the one defense albacore is great value from your Nakshub. Um,
and Pack
I almost
40,
I
like
I almost like following it up with Pack 40, but Comet is also there.
he might go for the Zerstorer,
Aura? Yeah,
instead of attacking into the Kitty Hawk with the Panzer Grenadiers. If he doesn't want to do that, he should Spoils of War first.
yeah,
Because he might even pick up something like a Type 93, which will allow him to take out both bombers. Um,
yeah. Pack 40 is the bane of the existence of many a Brit air deck. I do like the Zastora. Zastora is an awkward cuss for air to deal with. That said, mobilization. Um, Bubbles looking to get value out of this.
Not
Um,
really the
I'm
cards he
I'm
was
not sure
looking
he's
for.
going to love his draws off that. Those are not the cards he was looking for.
And this is one of the big differences between Bubbles' decks and or Bubbles' air deck and Baron's air deck that we highlighted in our deck analysis video was that Bubbles doesn't run Bomber Mafia, and he
Uh,
doesn't run, and Baron does run Bomber Mafia, and neither of them, I believe, runs Wave After Wave. So, and we saw actually that in yesterday in the OCC, with the air deck not running Wave After Wave and
mm,
struggling with that. Air at the moment, it seems, just needs board clears. It simply can't dominate the early game with its bombers the way it used to. There's just too much blitz, too much efficient removal available for
yep,
too many classes at the moment. And I mean, Bubbles seems to have taxed this deck for something very aggressive with these supply shortages.
yep.
And I mean, Baron's
Pack
deck is
40 is very unpleasant.
oh,
And this Astora is going to start just tearing holes in Bubbles' actual, Air Force comfortably. Zastora is devastating here. I do agree. I am. Many of you will know I am an aficionado of air decks, and right now Brit Air does desperately, desperately need board clear.
I almost wonder. I mean, I know he's most likely going to play it out to the end, but I always wonder at what point, if you're Bubbles, you just surrender and say go next because
Yeah.
it's air. He's able to draw convoy into convoy into convoy. He's certainly able to get back his hand advantage, but how on earth do you ever get back into this game on board? Um,
I mean, this is the question, isn't it? That Pack 40 sat there with and the Zastora, so that's basically two bombers that you drop just removed. I mean, supply priorities brings it down a little bit. That's a very good playoff air landing brigade, actually. I know it looks like a terrible trade, but what Bubbles is, I think, banking on is that he can try and hope to draw back into this, which makes sense.
yeah,
Um,
there's still HMS Illustrious Sexton
yeah,
in deck. There's a bunch more draw in deck. Bubbles not running Wellington in this air deck is going to be, again, quite a big issue. And he hasn't seen the comet yet. I do wonder if the concede will come in as soon as the comet comes out, because at that point, your opponent has 1 o'clock, and you can never stick bombers on the board for the rest of the game.
yeah. I mean, I do think if we did see Baron just kind of fire Comet off
As long
to
as he doesn't
face, we
trade
might.
it into the airline in brigade.
Yeah, I mean, let's not joke. I've seen people do close things on ladder.
Yeah.
These
Sometimes you
things
just
do
see the
happen.
1/4 and you have comet in hand, and that's
Uh,
that's as far as your brain thinks.
yeah. Bowles obviously, I think, probably thinking radar here. Yeah, which is going to get him illustrious, which does get him bodies. He has got Cass, Swordfish. So he could Swordfish, Cass, which takes them all to what, 2/4s? But that's not. They're all very Zestorable. That's the problem.
Yeah, he almost needs to double trade Story this turn.
Yeah, he
Um,
sees it. I think he just knows he has to remove. I mean, again, if you've played air for any amount of reps on ladder, you will know that you really, if you see Zastora and you're playing Brit Air, you have to remove it. That is a very smart use of the MEBF. That's going to threaten significant value. If I'm Bubbles, I'm thinking I maybe want to see one more draw before I think about the concede because
Convoy number
oh,
3.
convoy,
And he's just
interesting
running out of units at this
units,
point.
yeah. And these greyhounds are just not helping anyone because he cannot get them in position.
Plays out his entire hand. He gets some value trades going. However, the Swordfish is going to die. The Pack 40 can take out the Greyhound, which will remove the Heresy Pincer effect.
Yeah, that's going to be the
There
big
actually might
one
just be
because
a lethal here.
yeah, he's just going to go straight for face
Yeah.
and can. Yep.
And that's
That
just
was
going to
very
be game 3. Yeah.
Yep, very clinically played by Baron, I have to say. He just stayed very calm, saw the lines, played them well, and I think a couple of early lines were quite significant.
And that was a very big game for Baron, I think. I mean,
I
the
think so,
German
yeah.
Japan deck was going to get wins. It's not necessarily surprising the outcome if you just said, German Japan mid range versus Brit Air. But being able to mentally reset from essentially throwing game 2, at least from his perspective, um, being able to just come back from that because he could be 3-0 in the set, and instead he was 2-1, and that's a pretty big difference. However, if we also remember, the last time he played Bubbles, he went down 3-0 in the set. So at
Yeah,
this point, any lead is happy. He's happy with 2 wins. That means at worst he can lose 5-2, which is already better than the last time he played Bubbles.
yeah, 100%. I mean, he's in a good position. He's gotten one of his OTK decks with a win. He's gotten a win on a mid-range deck that he had to be betting was going to be a solid bet for a win. But in some cases, with something like mid-range or frontline, you are wondering, am I going to have to play maybe a couple of games to get that win? Getting that win, as you say, in that match this early is nice for him to get out the way. And Bubbles, I think, after the start of that would have he had an opening hand that felt good, but then you reach that point whereby, as we observed in the match, once you start losing your bombers and units that rapidly, it's actually very hard to come back on an air deck because you don't have that instantaneous presence and removal.
Yeah, it really just highlights the power of Empire Strikes. What made Air the best deck in the game back in the day for so many years is that in situations like that, you just had two copies of a card that was essentially like 4 credits, deal like 5 damage to all enemies.
Yeah,
um,
just huge. Um,
yeah, it basically just had two copies of the best board clear in the game for 4 credits. And that that made the deck better because you.
I mean, yeah. I mean, even more recently, though, you still Air still had access to lest we forget them, and I'm sure we never will. Monsoon Rot and Supply Shortage, which gave you access to some pretty stunning board clear. But now it's much more restricted, very much wave after wave.
I'm very interested as to why players are not running wave after wave. Because we see it from both our players in this tournament. We saw it in and from Noan, in the OCC, and I mean Noan went on to win the OCC. Spoilers. With a Brit Soviet air deck that didn't run wave after wave, and the games he lost on air were games where it was just like, well, if you had wave after wave for this position, you'd wipe the entire board and come back and probably win. But
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
not a card in your deck.
I legitimately was very confused by it. It's a thing. I mean, there are many smarter players in this game than me, so I totally understand that it's a thing. But yeah, every single one of my air decks runs wave after wave. I'm not gonna lie, but it's interesting, and as you say, no one went on to pick up the win in style. Also, go check that out if you like tournament play. It's interesting, but stick with us. This is going to be good.
All right. I've drawn two more 150 gold giveaways, which will be going to FFFFFFF 244446666666666 and Forlorn Squad. So you two lucky
Sorry, can you
winners,
just say the first one again 3 times really quickly?
please no. So, congratulations to you guys. And again, more giveaways will be drawn after every game. So, if you have not entered the giveaway, please do. Only about half of Twitch chat so far has entered the giveaway. So, if
Get
that's not you,
yourselves in, guys. There's
enter.
there's 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 thousands of gold being given away. Everyone can use gold. Well, kind of, sort of, unless you're on iOS or an Apple product because you can't redeem the code. But go find someone's PC and install Steam.
And we have entered that the much talked about spot in a tournament where we're going into game 4. However, this is not a best of 7. It's a best of 9. So the game 4 is definitely less meaningful because going up 3-1 does not mean you have 3 chances to close out the set. However, 3-1's not unmeaningful. 3-1 still absolutely huge, and Bubbles, on the other hand, is looking to just tie it back up like he did in game 2. And if you're Bubbles at this point, you probably aren't feeling great because you got somewhat crushed in game 1, and then game 2, your opponent missed lethal and killed themselves, and then in game 3, you got absolutely dominated. So at this point, you're not really feeling like anything you have done has won a game. It feels like your opponent is just playing against themselves so far across really all 3 games. So at this point, Bubbles is going to want a pretty convincing win. And to get that, I want to see him bring out the US midrange.
Yeah, you and me both. I think you pick up front line, you roll it back out again. I think you go to consistency because I agree with you. What you want to do is stabilize right now, and you want to stabilize and be on a deck that gets you back in the mindset of this deck is a deck I am playing well and I know well. Because you're right that the last few games have not been, from Bubbles' point of view, the most interactive games in some ways that he's ever played. So I too would like to see him bring out that frontline deck and just trust in it, and I suspect he probably will because I think Bubbles knows the importance of stabilizing in this game. 2-2 versus 3-1 is a significant feel more than anything else.
And if you bear it at this point, I mean, again, you still have the opportunity to just bring out the Exile, try to get a very fast win, and just sort of put your opponent down. Um, but this also could be an opportunity to go back to the push OTK, because if you just have the like rather than like a 2 minute win on Exile, if you make your opponent sit through like a 20 minute eventual Baron win on push OTK, your opponent's just gonna feel like they're not able to play the game anymore. Um, and that might be able to inflict more just mental damage. And also, you just saw Air get absolutely dismantled. Um, do you really want to switch to Air yourself? Bubbles doesn't necessarily have the exact same deck, but Bubbles is gonna find some pretty similar cards. And here we go. And
Interesting,
we've
interesting calls. This is okay. So Baron is going where we'd expect him to go. I would have agreed with you entirely because I think Baron might well have been thinking, at least I would have been thinking in Baron's place, Bubbles is probably going to bring frontline, and I've got a really good chance into it with push OTK. Bubbles running it back on air.
And this is going to be a much better matchup than if he had brought Frontline. If he had brought Frontline and ran into Push
Yeah.
OTK, that would have been a pretty awful experience. And that might be why he didn't go for Frontline. He might have expected this Push OTK to come back. Or
I
he,
think we might legitimately be seeing some game theory at play here, where Bubbles and Baron have kind of read into each other, and Bubbles has come out just a little bit ahead because Baron is not loving this matchup.
no, absolutely not at all. And he's essentially going to try to end the game as quickly as possible, and find a well-timed Depths of Winter. By the Sword there is a wonderful pickup, because that will draw you
Yeah.
up to 8 cards. You avoid overdrawing, but also you will have a full hand of options. And, like, your opponent doesn't have a board slot to try to, like, push Greyhound, for example. I suppose you might be worried that they might push, something like Gladiator and then get, like, a Piracy down or
Yeah,
something,
I mean,
but
that said, those aren't necessarily the four cards you want to see off that by the sword.
no. None of those cards reads Depths of Winter. Um,
Yeah, none of those cards. I mean, you've got some nice draw options, but that's not really what you want to see right now. And Bubbles is just wailing on your HQ now. Um,
However, Baron has picked up a push and 2 Red Dons.
oh,
3 Red
if Baron
Dons.
can, yeah, yeah, Baron is getting very close to being able to just end this thing.
uh,
Um,
a push top deck, he will need 8 credits without,
yeah.
I believe he runs a single copy of Aerial Reconnaissance, which
Yeah,
will be
I
able to
did. I
reduce this
called that
cost.
out as a very I think I may have called it ballsy call in this deck. I always like running at least 2 copies of aerial reconnaissance for that reason, because otherwise, yes, you have to see turn 8 or you can't pull the combo. Um, but that said, he has got plenty of other options. Corson's not doing a lot for you right now. Oh, you kind of don't want to see yet another Red Dawn, though. Although I suppose now at least you know you can start using it to remove threats. But
Yeah. Um, that's the issue is none of the threats died to Red Dot at this point, and Bubbles has a very, very
no, but
straightforward game
Bubbles has
plan.
got. Yeah, Bubbles is building up to a truly, truly terrifying shark play. That shark is starting to loom very large. Because if Baron actually does this and doesn't. Oh, because he's not damaging his own HQ, because I'm just doing the maths, but that shark's lethal right now, right? Unless Baron can heavily clear the board.
Yep. I suspect we'll see this Wildebeest get taken out by the From the People and then
Yeah.
Fortification come out, which
Fortification has to be played, right? Yeah, because otherwise, I mean, Bubbles is still in a position to really make you hurt.
the Sincerely Yours
It's
pickup is not terrible. However,
terrible.
Baron's likely never going to have the health to do the regular push.
You
Red
know,
dot,
if
red
I'm
dot, push,
Bubbles
push.
right now, I almost, I know he's gone with Sincerely Yours, but I almost consider playing my research and going for the advanced research to just build my way up and go. Synthetic rubber's still a thing, you know. That said, he's put Baron in a very tough position. Baron needs to basically fight out. Glamour Boys is big. Glamour Boys is going to help a bit. He needs all the HQ defense he can get right now. Make no mistake.
Sharks 3 from hand, and there's 7 on board. Greyhound, I think, is just lethal. Um,
Yeah. What?
Greyhound,
Yes.
and then for
Yeah.
freedom, it's even
Greyhound
one over
for
lethal.
freedom. Yeah.
And again, we see this a very fast loss for this push OTK deck. And the series once again going to be tied up now 2 apiece.
I do want to say this has been, if you are a fan of Air, Bubbles has played this masterfully. This is very clinical airplay. Just see the line. That's a beautiful finish. Doesn't need anything. Yeah,
And
that's very good play.
it's very easy to look at what Bubbles was doing and sort of read that as a very simplistic playstyle. It was just, Bubbles played out some bombers and then buffed the bombers and then attacked face every single turn. And it's really easy to look at that and be like, oh, well, obviously you do that. It's just very straightforward. How many people in that same position would, be like, oh, I can get like free value trades on these guard units, or like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to overcommit into a Depths of Winter, so I'll instead like, get some card draw going with a convoy out here. Um, but Bubbles just knew his game plan was just constant pressure into the HQ. Yes, you're going to have multiple fortifications, multiple glamour boys. It's going to feel like I'm essentially trying to push the boulder up the hill. But eventually you will run out of healing. And you have to answer these air units, and there's only one card in your deck that does so. And
Yeah.
Baron got. It's hard to say close because the game never really felt close. But if you looked at his hand, if it was
It
the.
was closer than it looked. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a point at which you're thinking if this goes to turn 8 and he gets a halfway decent draw, Baron just wins. Um,
Yeah, if
but
there was a Depths of Winter around like turn 6,
yeah,
suddenly this game looks completely different. But those bombers were just able to get in enough damage that double push would never be enough. And then they just killed him like 2 turns later. So
yeah. And sometimes that's what Brit does. But I mean, again, the big call out there is that sometimes you have to realize when you're playing, especially Brit Air with a lot of bombers, how often you need to care about the guards. And often it's a lot less than you think it is. Because really, they're not doing that much.
yeah, and that's sort of the issue with Baron's deck. He has those 2/5 guards. Yes, I maybe even 4 copies of those 2/5 guards. And that's going to increase his ability to draw with stiff upper lip, but really that's not the matchup he wants with air. So seeing the air deck go through, um, not a huge surprise.
No,
However,
we said in the review it was good for a win. I mean, it's Air. It's pretty much always good for at least one win in any time when you can play it more than once.
and that is going to mean that we don't get to see the air mirror. And if you're Bubbles, you're pretty happy that you get to have air dodge the exile deck. I don't think Bubbles would have been too happy to have that matchup.
No,
Um,
Air into Exile is a matchup you do not want to play. I had a beautiful time when there was a halcyon moment in which everyone was playing Brit Air at the upper end of ladder, and I came out with Exile decks and ended up with a really good win rate. Um, I think Bubbles will be very happy not to see that, but I think it's going to be interesting to see the picks going forward for these guys. If you're Baron, do you like how much do you want to get that push OTK win out of the way versus do you think you kind of now have to think is that going to be my deck that I have to win the tournament on? Because we're getting quite close now. Both players only have 3 decks left.
yeah, and if you're Bubbles, you're feeling like, okay, well, I mean, I've lost 2 games and I've won with one of the decks that lost, and the other deck that lost is probably my best deck, and it has some pretty decent matchups moving forward. If you're Baron, you're looking, I've lost 2 games, both of them on the same deck that is still yet to get a win. That is a bad looking trajectory for Baron. So even though the series is tied to a piece, there's definitely some different conversations, internal conversations going on in these players' heads on how they're feeling about their own place and how they're feeling about the decks they have left. Because at this point, we're down to a best of 5, essentially. A best of 5 with 3 pretty untraditional decks that you would expect to see in a best best of five, particularly with Baron having two air decks left. And these are two air decks he hasn't touched yet in this tournament. I'm not sure if he's keeping them to essentially just hard target the Alpine deck at the end, thinking Bubbles will leave those. I'm not sure exactly why these two air decks have yet to be touched from Baron. However, are we going to see one of them finally come out, or is he just going to keep running push OTK until it gets the win?
I don't know whether he'll do it until it gets the win, but I kind of like Baron running push OTK back here for precisely that reason. So, okay, Alpine might come out and roll your push OTK, at which point Bubbles gets the Alpine win that he kind of really needs. But if Bubbles does not drop Alpine, then you now know you're going to get a good chance of an air into Alpine matchup, and Alpine chat really does not love that matchup. Like, really badly does not love that matchup.
And if I'm Baron here, I'm looking push into self damage feels pretty good. Push into frontline feels pretty good.
Good.
If I'm Baron, I'm just gonna run the push OTK, and if I'm Bubbles, I'm gonna run the Alpine because at this point you have two really bad matchups and one fine matchup, and you have reason to believe that the fine matchup is going to be next.
Yeah, and you want that win. You need that win. You
Yeah,
really don't want to be fishing for it against Snare Deck. I mean, it would be my expectation, and chat can mock me mercilessly in a minute, that we are going to see Bubbles bring the Alpine deck and Baron bring the push OTK. Because I think no matter how you slice it as an analytical player, and both of these players are tournament experienced players with analytical minds, that's where you land in my head.
yeah. However, before we get into game number 5, let's do some few more giveaways. So let's start with a 300 gold giveaway. And whoops, that is the wrong button. Draw entrant. The winner of the 300 gold giveaway is going to be BPSF Tom. So congratulations, BPSF Tom. You have won 300 gold that will be headed your way. At the end of this stream. And let's pull another two 150 gold giveaways, because we have quite a few of these to hand out. And the first one is going to be going to Superboy000123. And the second one will be going to Von Malachowski. So congratulations, both of you. And good luck everybody else who is still left in the giveaway trying to win. There is still plenty of prizes left. We're barely halfway through the giveaways. And we're barely halfway through the set. A little less than halfway through. We're headed into game 5 of what potentially might be 9 games. It's certainly looking this way based on how things have been going so far.
It's truism. I'm glad I had caffeine. Baron, it's fine. You can win a watch and like $50. Hush, man. I do love the flex that you can get from having the watch if you win this tournament and just putting it on your board.
Yeah. So yeah, the grand prize for this tournament is the watch in-game board item as well as $50. So yeah, big tournament earnings. The watch is actually worth more than $50. And also it's on rotation, so you can't easily get it. So yeah, that's going to be worth a lot. Both of these players are absolutely going to be wanting to get it.
You were half right.
Yep, Baron running back on push, Bubbles switching back to frontline, and I think this is going to be a bit of a one-sided affair for Baron, unless Bubbles can get a very crushing blitzkrieg. I imagine we're just going to see Baron guard up.
Bubbles is going to need to get some very, very good draws because his opening hand is not where he wants it to be, and Baron is just going to turtle up and wait until he lands on his tools. So this is a matchup where you do definitely favour push OTK. It's not a matchup that you can very easily answer with frontline.
He decides to go for the tempo play with the half track, getting that down early. And if you're Baron, you start thinking about blitzkriegs. You're like, okay, there's 2 tanks on the board. you don't feel great.
I
These
mean, the one thing you don't want right now is to see one of those tanks pushed forward and then maybe like a blitzkrieg, or worse yet, it go a turn a bit longer and someone pulls off a double blitzkrieg and your day is
and
just terrible.
there's the Blitzkrieg
And
pickup with another 35G in hand. There's nothing quite yet here for Bubbles, but it's this is the type of hand that you want if you're Bubbles. And
it
that's a
is. I
huge pickup.
Yeah. Now, Baron only runs one copy of aerial reconnaissance. So he's going to have to be very tactical about when and how he wants to use it because he wants to get good value from it. Great Patriotic War's nice to see.
Yeah, it's a card you're going to be pretty happy with. To get the aerial reconnaissance.
The
Triggered
only
this
problem Baron's
turn.
got with the hand that's in front of him is he's got a lot of cards that he wants to get rid of that just cantrip and replace themselves, and his hand size is something he has to manage.
I think he needs to go for the Winter Warfare hold up aerial reconnaissance this turn because your opponent can't get through Bryansk on board.
Yeah, and you never don't want to see your Great Patriotic War go down to. He chooses to push up instead. I don't want to be hypercritical, but I'm not sold on that play. I would have liked to have seen the aerial recon.
Yeah,
Bubbles choosing to just let it sit though.
feels like it just leaves you in a bit of an awkward position. Maybe he really wanted to get this trade into the P40. I mean, I feel like you don't use your units a lot in this matchup, so you shouldn't be that afraid of it. Looks like he's gonna
Yeah.
pin the P40
He's
again.
going to pin the P40 and draw, get sickle. So again, these cards are cantripping. They are, sorry for the magic terminology, chat. They are replacing themselves, and that is something to be aware of when hand management matters. Overdraw, there's the aerial reconnaissance, and if that aerial reconnaissance triggers now, it's devastatingly strong, because seeing two of your Red Dawns, yeah, and the Great Patriotic War plus draw reduced doesn't hurt. But Baron's going to need to slam down that glamour, boys, before this starts getting very unpleasant.
And second half track in hand. 97th Rifles, great
Yeah.
pickup to just create another guard. They can't both be half
Yeah.
tracked. But is Baron
Um,
going to feel that he's under that much pressure and avoid going for the stiff upper lip? He goes for the stiff upper lip, and this is just going to be game over with half track Blitzkrieg. Bubbles
yep.
taking his first
There's
lead.
no way that Baron could have predicted it, but this is just game. Half track Blitzkrieg, and everyone says goodnight.
Yep, that's sort of just the hand you never want to see. If you're the push player, your opponent having both their half tracks, double 35T, and an early Blitzkrieg. Um, Obviously, there was ways Baron could have played that differently, but it's a lot easier for us to say what he should or shouldn't do when we see Bubbles having a very specific hand you don't necessarily expect from your opponent every game.
Yeah. No mistake though, that is a big win for Bubbles. That is not a favoured matchup, and being able to come out with a win. Now Baron is looking at that push OTK deck, and how much are you loving your push OTK
Yeah,
deck right now, and how much are you thinking, I wish I'd not brought you?
and
I
at
mean, again, we did talk about, I think, in the video, whether the merit would have been to consider bringing the Brit main variant,
yeah, like
just for the consistency.
at the
But
end of the day, this result from this game is not particularly different than if you just brought one of your two air decks and the front line is fine into either of those, and at the very least it's a 50-50 matchup, and then frontline wins.
yeah,
At the end of the day, the frontline getting a win, it was expected into your remaining decks,
yeah,
and whether it wins now or wins later in the series doesn't matter a lot, just from a purely objective point of view. However, people are not computers. People are not machines. People are very, very subjective. We get into our heads. And if you're Baron right now, you're thinking, I have lost on Push OTK 3 consecutive games in a row. Well, I suppose not in a row, but I've lost all 3 games I have played on Push OTK. And I'm now losing in this set for the very first time. Does he run it again? I mean, we saw him
I mean,
switch
like,
off on his first loss onto the deck. He switched off to the German deck, got a quick win, then switched back to push OTK, lost, ran it back into the game 5, and then lost. I mean,
The
like,
thing you've got to be aware of, though, is the remaining two lists for Bubbles. I honestly think, in some ways, Bubbles has the harder, even with the lead, question as to which of these two decks, because these are not conventional decks. Bubbles has got his own take on self damage, but if he drops that self damage list and Baron does roll back the push OTK, he could just get utterly obliterated.
yeah, I mean, both of our predictions were 5-3. And Bubbles is up 3-2, which means
Right.
that if our predictions are accurate, it means Baron will win the next 3 games in a row. Um,
I, I mean, I think in fairness, both you and I might. I mean, I certainly would admit that I would own. I think Bubbles is now left with his two weakest decks.
yeah. I think for sure. I think this self-damage deck, it's it's very difficult to say. I do think it's definitely his weakest deck into Baron's lineup. The choice of having no healing, I think, is going to he's going to regret against push, which unlike many OTKs, which is just get all the combo pieces and then it does like 20 to 30 damage. Push is able to deal like 8 damage. Or eight's a bit difficult to get to, but it's able to deal like 9 damage from hand. Um, no,
Yeah, I
12
mean,
damage
your
from
big
hand, like kind of in the middle. So if you don't have any healing and you want to damage yourself, like 8 to 10, push gonna be a really rough matchup. Air, again, very easy to get in some chip damage early with air. Even has a bit of burst potential with stuff like Wellington or HMS. And then Exile. I mean, Exile also has a little bit of burst potential with the Sea Patrols, with I mean, just
it
the
does.
the Yak. If anything ever sticks for a turn, hammer home, suddenly your life is ruined. Um, Self damage 3, not amazing matchups, and then Alpine, 2 absolutely terrible
We
matchups, and
terrifying. Yeah, I was
then
gonna say he's got
a
two awful
and
matchups.
then like a decent matchup into push. I think it's probably the best matchup in Barrett's entire lineup, so he's happy that that's left for him. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I would probably actually, honest to goodness, as much as we do, like, I do raise my eyebrows about Alpine. I think Alpine's got a pretty decent chance into that push list. I'm not. It's very hard as Bubbles to decide though whether you want to get the bigger albatross out of the way, because you are right. I would love to see, like, I would like to see, if I'm Bubbles, Baron getting a self damage win, like a sorry, a push OTK win out of the way soon, so that I can stop thinking about that. Because you are right, the Siberian sneeze problem is there for self damage, which is that you kind of do a chunk of push's work for it, and then it just has an unfortunate sneezing event and you die. Um, so I think it'll be interesting. That said, I will say, if Bubbles wins the next match, all bets are so off, because that
yeah,
would be an explosive win.
yeah, it's not difficult to imagine Baron winning 3 out of the next 4 games. It would be very difficult to imagine Baron winning 3 out of the next 3 games, or at least much more difficult to imagine Baron winning 3 out of the next 3. Winning 3 in a row is quite difficult against any lineup. However, before we find out what is going to happen in Game 6, let's do another two 150 gold giveaways. And those will be going to Hicks84 and Baron von Glower. So Baron participating in the tournament, also participating in the giveaway, earning his 150 gold and potentially the diamonds, or the watch, I should say. And maybe if Bubbles does end up running away with this, some slight commiserations with the 150 gold. I will let the players know that they are ready for
I mean, just quick check in with chat. How are chat feeling? Do you guys feel? Who do you feel's got the win from here while we wait for the players to be ready to go? Get cheering for your people, because we're getting into the pointy end now.
this is true. Um, and actually, let's create a quick poll I will run for 3 minutes. Who is going to win? Vote in the poll now. Um, and we're just waiting for our players to set up. So in the meantime, um, why not vote in the poll? And if you haven't, enter the giveaway. So, slight favorite of Baron so far.
Yeah,
Um,
just
which
a little.
it's very fun. I think it's probably because of how how much we've been hyping up the lineup difference here. Because Bubbles is winning, in the
Yeah,
conventional
I mean,
sense.
look. Oh, well, we're in. So
All right.
we've got Alpine is out,
And it's gonna be
and
running
Baron
into
has
the air
switched.
jack.
Yeah. So if you're Bubbles, you're not loving this, but you know it was likely to happen.
However, if
Um,
you had to pick a starting hand, it would look something like this, with
I
going
was going to say,
first.
I mean, yeah, this has got some raw body potential.
The
Um,
Heresy in Baron's hand, though, is going to be absolutely massive. If he can get that down on a bomber, there's very little Bubbles can do about that.
yeah, the problem is Alpine has nothing that's fast enough to get through and answer that, and that is a real problem because it is just devastating if it sticks. I almost, if I'm Baron right now, I almost just drop the two Parasy and say, all right, answer it. He could also albacore and pin, buy himself a bit more time to establish himself. I mean, let's be honest, he's got options right now, which is not surprising. Um,
Looks like he might go for 164th. He could Heresy the 164th.
64th.
That's what he's gonna do. It does mean that you are not gonna get any more value out of the Heresy. However, it takes out your opponent's very big threat, well being the most credit efficient, getting several different units on board that are gonna stick. Then the buff going on the Gladiator is what Baron wants to see.
Yeah,
And
very much so.
you're already kind of into an awkward spot because you can play one
Also,
Alpine
I
guy,
should
but
point out Baron will be very aware, as I am, that he runs two copies of two Parasite.
yeah.
And that one copy of two Parasy now just becomes a speed bump that you can shove into the front line, which again Alpine really doesn't like. Anything that makes Alpine slow down just makes Alpine sad.
Baron has several different answers for this Gebirgsjäger, and I think it's a Gebirgsjäger. Uh,
It is. I think I'm looking, I'm squinting, but I think it is. Looks like chat are favouring Bubbles. 62% of you chat believe that Bubbles got this.
all right, swung over to Bubbles in the end. Bubbles picking up the Comet. Very big card in this matchup. Heresy pushing up does allow for Schützen, so there's a slight possibility of a burn strategy working out here in the end. The issue is Air is just able to put enough units onto the board that
Yeah.
you don't really have the time to just comment them in the face.
No,
Front time.
also, I mean, Cass in hand, you've got a Greyhound that you can now get into the front line. You can start getting some really good trades here.
Yeah, you can even
Um,
Swordfish, Cass, push Greyhound, and take
Greyhound,
out the
yeah.
4-3.
And that puts a very awkward Greyhound that again is slowing down Alpine, which of course you just don't want to see. And yeah, that was a pretty strong tempo play. That said, Bubbles has a strong answer. Comet is powerful, but also Schutzen right now is very efficient.
Yep.
Gives Bubbles another big unit to trade with. Bomber Mafia, that's. I mean, Bomber Mafia into Alpine, not necessarily as good as you'd want it to be. Sea Embargo, Cass. Okay, so that's big pickups for Baron here.
Yeah, I think you definitely want to Gladiator and take
Yeah.
out this Alpini, which means you could Cass. I'd prefer getting the 2 damage in on the Schützen immediately. You
Yeah,
just kind of
I'd
want to
like
keep the
to
health
see.
of the opponent's units under control.
Yeah, because what you want to do is you want to be able to just keep removing your opponent's threats. I like Gladiator down. I don't have a problem with that, but then I do the damage. And then I know that I can clear the threat next turn because Cass it dies. I'm in a good position to answer pretty much anything that my opponent drops. Yeah. Now, of course, Bubbles has Comet and Dornier. Now, that means that Bubbles has to think about the way he wants to play this hand. Um,
I think you have
Dornier is
to
one of those.
start going for Comet to farm these bombers. You don't have, like, the other option is Spoils of War and Prey.
It's not great. I mean, I surely, yeah, you just have to show you show Comet and you start like just removing this stuff because you know it's there. I mean, that said, Baron's going to love to see Sincerely Yours right now. That's going to be very helpful. Illustrious is huge because he can strike cast it immediately, and Alpine does not have like Comet can only answer so many bombers.
Yeah, at this point, yeah, Comet needs 3 turns to answer this, and in the meantime, that is 3 turns where you either can't play ground units, or if you do, they will be simply traded out immediately. And Baron can start pushing damage into face. Um,
Yeah, and if Bubbles wants to leverage Comet, which he needs to, Dornier becomes a dead card because Comet plus Dornier not good.
he's looking to go for the sea embargo here, and take the front line actually. So pulls back on the
Oh,
sea
that
embargo, and that's going to be massive. Stops the Dornier,
yeah,
stops the encirclement.
yeah, it changes the game massively, and that's again, if you're watching chat, this is where you see top players showing the way that they think because that's a very, very interesting choice.
And speaking of interesting choices, this is the
Ooh,
choice Bubbles is deciding between on his spoils of war. Reich's research can take out any of these bombers in the support line. However, the second Alpini is card draw, and it's Alpine, and you're playing an Alpine deck, and your hand's looking pretty bare. Um,
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to outvalue this and leverage Comet, I like second Alpini, but we'll see. What did he
takes
take?
the research.
Search, yeah, okay, so he's gonna well, he gets the V1, which is good. It's good removal. He's dropping the Dornier. Now,
I suspect we're going to see this sea embargo on one of the swordfish. See what he can pick up. If he can't pick up anything super useful, Greyhound can be pushed up, and then the
yeah,
Dornier can be simply traded out.
out, yeah.
Shark.
Shark
Oh,
all
that's
day
so good.
long. Yeah, it's just like you grab the shark and you're like, yes, thank you. Uh, it's huge. It is. This is a massive, massive swing from Shark, as is often the case, because now the Dornier is gone and you haven't had to actually lose anything into it. Greyhound up, and now this becomes very, very hard for Bubbles to manage.
Sudden Strike pickup's going to be good. He can actually
Yeah,
clear out the entire support line this turn. Um, the issue is
he can.
Air has convoys and Sincerely Yours, and Alpine doesn't.
Yeah, I was going to say the issue here is that one of these two decks runs actual draw.
I think he might actually
Um,
be considering trading out the Greyhound here. Takes out the
yeah,
Gladiator, maybe scared of a Cass in the front line. Uh,
line. I mean, I can see the logic. I mean, obviously, Baron just plays Sincerely Yours here. He's kind of got the time for it. He's got some interesting choices in hand right now. Albacore's doing nothing for you, but that Spitfire is basically saying you're gonna need to trade out your Comet.
yeah, this Spitfire is going to be threatening. Essentially
Uh,
lethal. Not
so,
quite
yeah,
lethal on board with Comet being able to take out the Greyhound or the Shark, but you're pretty certain that it's going to be lethal in hand. Bubbles recognizes
yeah.
that, trades out the Spitfire, plays his 2 Alpini units.
Kitty Hawk's pretty devastating right now. Kitty Hawk, again, anything that gives you damage from hand when you're playing air makes you very. Oh, the Shark. Oh, this is starting to look very bad for Bubbles.
Yeah, and there was
Bubbles has Bubbles has got no draw. He's got Baron's got pin. I mean, oh, this is pretty much game.
and that is
Um,
quite literally game, with
yeah,
Vanguard not being able to be played, no
no
Alpine
way
units,
back.
encirclement not being able to be played, no targets in the front line, and that is the
Aaron
worry we
Pfizer's
have.
back up.
That is a win for Baron on his Britain USA air deck. Of course, he still has the Britain Poland Exile air deck left over, and that was the worry with Alpine. That is sort of exactly what the fears of bringing an Alpine deck is of that type of game happening. And also, we talked about how Air seems to be struggling with our board clears. That's exactly what Air wants to be able to do. And unfortunately, it can't do that against all of the decks in the game. It's hard to do that against Jaggro. It's hard to do that against the US and the German mid-range decks. However, it can do that against Alpine. Alpine just simply doesn't have the credit sheet. It doesn't have the reactivity and dynamic play of a lot of other decks that can sort of keep Air stuck. We saw Air just play bombers, and then those bombers hit infantry, and then rinse and repeat for 10 turns, and
Yeah,
eventually one of the players has units on board and cards in hand, and the other one doesn't.
I mean it's a very frustrating position to be in if you're playing the Alpine deck because you know you have nothing in your deck that really answers it. Comet's probably the strongest card you have in your deck into Air, and that very carefully chosen play of the Spitfire from Baron was huge because Bubbles had no choice. Bubbles has to lose his best card to remove a truly terrifying threat, and it's pretty tough.
yeah, and I mean, at this point, we're tied up 3-3. We've been tied up at every single time. Um, and this means we are guaranteed at minimum 8 games. Which means we're already going past anything we saw in the game sevens or in the best of sevens. And honestly, I hope we go to game 9. I really do.
I would love it just from a theatrical enjoyment point of view. I think these guys are just trading bombs right now, and it's fantastic to watch.
Yeah, I think if I'm Bubbles here, I think you just have to run Alpine again and hope you get it into um,
I mean, you have to, surely, right? I mean,
I suppose the question is, would you rather play self damage into push or Alpine into exile? Um, because the one you would rather play more is the deck that you shouldn't pick. You should pick the one that you want to play the least now, so you're guaranteed to get the favorable matchup. Um,
yeah.
but there are, between Alpine into exile and push into um, or self damage into push, I don't want to play either of those.
I was gonna say, can I just choose the door because I'm not loving it. I mean, honestly though, realistically, from a more clinical point of view, I would almost rather play self damage into push than play Alpine into exile. If only because self damage can just outpace push if it can't find its tools.
Yeah. Um. All right, let's do another giveaway, and this time let's do a 300 gold giveaway. So 300 gold will be going to none other than Munir Dank. Congratulations once again, Munir Dank. Um, and we will do
Streamer tribe
a
shout out.
150 gold giveaway alongside that, and that will be going to, of course, Cursed01, longtime supporter of the stream and channel. So thank you, both of you, and thank you everybody for following along, watching, participating in the chat, joining the giveaways, and congratulations to our winners. We still have another 4 150 gold card codes and 2 300 gold not card 300 gold codes to give away after this game, the next game, and fingers crossed a third game after that. But now let's let the players know that we are ready for what is game 7 of this set. And at this point, it is down to a best of 3, essentially. They've worked their way through 3 decks apiece, down to a best of 3, and if I had to pick, I mean, Baron's decks are good. maybe not quite the standard decks you expect in a tournament, but pretty good. Bubbles' decks have a lot more question marks surrounding them. Uh,
I'm still sticking with my belief that Baron will win this because I like to stick to my guns. But so okay, so we're gonna see push, and we're gonna see push into Alpine.
and if you
Alpine,
are
yes.
an innocent Bubbles fan, this is the exact matchup you want. That does not mean
Yep.
it is easy. It doesn't even necessarily mean it's favored. But this is definitely the best shot your Alpine deck is going to have at winning here. Bubbles, thinking about keeping the sudden strike and knowing that Bryansk can be such a problem, decides he's going to send it back because he would rather just snowball on board and have the
Yeah.
fuel to keep that snowball going. And I think that is the correct thing. I think this is going to be similar to
Yeah.
Air, where he's just going to try to snowball out on board and pray your opponent doesn't find Depths of Winter. The only problem is, unlike Air, you're not dealing constant damage. You are instead simply building
No,
up
it
way
is
too many different.
true, but Baron's not looking at the best starting hand this deck is ever gonna see. Um,
Bubbles going with the Dornier.
I mean, I actually quite like the Dornier right now because if it can stick around even a little bit, it is answering one of Alpine's biggest problems. Okay, so the auto cannon
Yeah,
now. Okay,
two
that's
artillery in hand with any
and
units you
yeah,
play being pushed to the front line. Not really what you want to see. Might just see the Schützen for credit efficiency.
yeah. I don't think you really had a choice. That was not the top deck Bubbles was hoping for. Um,
But that's also going to mean that by turn 5, the Alpine deck is going to have no Alpine units on board. Not
uh-huh.
really the start you want. Um,
I mean, let's be honest, neither of these players is looking at their opening plays. It's almost like you're opening in chess, then someone comes along and swaps all the pieces. Um, nobody's looking at this thinking, this is how I wanted it to go. Um, oh,
oh,
okay.
just his hand
I
is
mean,
full of 3-cost cards.
yeah.
And I've been playing a lot of Parallel recently, and in Parallel, you could bank one of these cards to earn an extra credit slot and have 6 this turn. Unfortunately, cards does not work that way. You are stuck on 5, and that means you are going to have to probably float 2 credits. You technically could play out the Vanguard um, with a
Is he,
Gebirgsjäger, but
is Bubbles actually
I mean, it's the most stats you could get on board this turn.
I mean, yeah, it's the biggest body. And technically there's nothing on the board that just removes it.
Yep,
And
this
realistically, everything you play after this is dealing damage to your opponent's HQ. Baron's hand's getting very full.
Yeah, double by the sword, not really what you want to see against Alpine in an 8-card hand.
And no.
He's thinking about tossing a
Um,
Red Dawn to take out autocannon.
yeah, he really is, and I know why. Because despite the fact that it's sitting there, and chat might be looking at going, "Oh God, like there's artillery in the front." Like the problem is, autocannon is an outright threat, frontline or no.
It also
Because Bubbles
allows
has
him
a
to go for the Yak 7 if he wants on the follow-up,
yeah.
which is probably the only time that you're going to be able to get this card out of your hand.
Yeah, I mean, at the minute, part of what you're thinking is how efficiently can I start clearing my hand because I know I have to. He's Bryansk, I mean, is also fair. Another guard up, making it harder to super value out. But the Dornier is that Dornier can slowly but surely start to really have value.
And I think we might just see double Gebirgsjäger push up.
Yeah,
It's either going to be Gebirgsjäger and Alpini. This way he has the credits left over to attack. Um,
yeah, which I do like actually because that's 3 damage to HQ, which is solid. Um, This is not actually a terrible position for Bubbles, particularly because he's looking at Baron's hand size and thinking, if I can just drag this enough, if I can force a really bad overdraw, it's game.
yeah, Baron's hand, he somehow doesn't have any combo pieces.
I know. I'm literally looking at it going, have I missed one? And I haven't. He
And
is literally landed. He has none of his combo pieces and not a lot of space.
normally that's normally that's a good thing against an aggro deck because every combo piece in your hand is one less card that can affect the board up until the point where you kill your opponent. However, he also doesn't really have he doesn't have Depths of Winter. He doesn't have snowstorms to slow down the board. He's
Yeah.
simply just throwing Briaths out to die. But this is clearing up room.
Which is important. Bubbles on the meantime is developing one hell of a front line. For you do not see Alpine do this very often.
Vanguard is going to mean that Bubbles is not just simply going to die to double push, double Red Dawn.
Yeah,
And from his
I
perspective,
think that
he's
was a
getting up to that territory where Baron could have double push, double Red Dot, and you've seen Baron hold on
yeah.
to a lot of cards in hand. From Bubbles' perspective, Baron probably has at least 3 combo pieces in hand.
Yeah, I mean, Bubbles cannot see what we can see, and he's got to be thinking he's got to be close. Is turn 8 it? Do I have to be ready? Which is why, of course, Vanguard was a good play. Of course, we can see Baron's hand, and he once again draws into not a combo piece, followed by not a combo piece.
That also means that oftentimes you're fine accepting maybe 1 or 2 overdraws in push, just taking a little bit of risk, playing around what you overdraw. Here, knowing that the concentration of combo cards in your
Yeah,
deck, left in your deck,
maths
is
is not your
so
friend
high.
right now.
And this
You
Dornier
do
is
not
putting in work.
work. Yeah, I mean, I love Dornier. I've loved it. I was lucky enough to reveal Dornier. But I mean, this Dornier is an absolute beast in this matchup because Baron cannot answer it, and this is Alpine with a huge advantage.
And suddenly, with Sunstrike in hand, Bubbles is getting close to maybe just killing Baron. I mean, Baron has a
Yeah,
fort in hand. National Fire Service. He's probably not going to hold it up if he feels like his wall of Bryansk will hold.
he
Uh,
finally finds a combo piece.
this trading allows Baron to take out one of this 5/6 Alpine.
See Baron picking up the yak there and wishing he had a fifth space on his support line.
He also might just trade out the Schutzen and the 2/3 Alpine. Um,
I mean, getting any number of Alpine bodies off the board is not hurting him right now.
he floats the credit, forcing his opponent to trade into him.
He does. He also forces his opponent to think about whether he's holding up aerial reconnaissance. But I mean, ultimately, you just have to eat the fact that there's nothing you can do about that. Sudden strike is huge.
This Fiat is gonna
Um,
work not amazingly with Dornier, so he's actually gonna hold it back, and I like this. It's a reset if the Depths of Winter comes out, and if you're
yeah,
Bubbles at this point, you're thinking like, am I gonna die? Is the Depths of Winter that was he
yeah,
just greeting on Depths of Winter until all his guards were off the board? Somehow
yeah.
the answer to both of that is no.
I mean, I would like to say I do not in any way mathematically understand how Baron's hand looks like it does this deep into the game, and Baron is probably thinking something very similar. National Fire Service is a good hold up here because if Bubbles has the right combo of cards, he may well just start ripping holes and going for the face.
I really
Um,
like this National Fire Service because essentially you're emptying out your hand, you're recognizing he's probably going to trade out my entire board, and Baron's
uh
strategy next turn is to play by the sword, find Depths of Winter, play Depths of Winter, play Winter Warfare, and then you have the full hand to combo down your opponent with a Great Patriotic War.
Because Baron sees this coming, he's smart enough to know this is a serious possibility, and National Fire Service is huge here because National Fire Service just saved Baron an enormous amount of HQ defense. So he's got another Red Dawn. So he has to buy the sword. We know this. Great Patriotic Wars there, but no push.
He can Winter Warfare, but that's he can Winter Warfare, develop a Red Dawn into a From the People to take out all the Alpine units.
Just leaves the 5/5 and obviously the Dornier that's just been sat there. The Dornier's crew and pilot are currently drinking some form of camp coffee and thinking, well, we didn't expect it to go this way. Um,
Baron holding on to the cards. I'm not a big fan of this because
oh,
you're letting too much damage
yeah.
get into face. And Dornier actually stops the comet, so he has to potentially consider sacrificing Dornier just
I
into
think
this guide to get
Dornier
rid of
at
it.
some point, yeah.
For now, he's gonna play it or he's gonna keep it on board. It does not push up the
It
Alpinis.
doesn't push up the created units, no, it only pushes up the deployed units. That said, though, those units still came down with stats, and Baron is still sat there on 3 HQ defense thinking, where's the rest? Can I have a push at all, ever? Um, this is not good if you're Baron.
At this point, you just have to hit by the sword that draws Depths of Winter
You kind of
Warfare as
have
the two
to,
cards that
right?
get added to your hand, and then also doesn't overdraw any combo pieces with the additional 4 draws.
I mean, that sickle is utterly. Oh, yeah, I mean, he's got great patriotic war, so I mean, he can find a way. Depths of Winter, which he really needs, because but I would know that I'd leave him on
Yeah,
one HQ defense,
there's just not enough.
and no, it's just not enough gun. Guard goes down. No, it's not a guard. Oh,
Yep. It's just
oh,
GG. Baron's throwing in the towel. And I really think it came down to um, the previous
yeah,
turn choosing to draw for 1 with the
yeah,
stiff upper lip and then playing down the guard, leaving the 5 4
yeah.
Alpini, which then hit face for 7 on the following turn. Um, yeah, maybe
I
just
mean,
not the right call.
huge props, Bubbles though. There's the Alpine win.
And this is now Baron losing 4 games on push OTK.
Okay, yeah.
Which I mean is wild. It's Baron. He is the OTK guy in cards.
Yeah, I mean, you want to pick one player that I would put like I'd almost bet a mortgage if you said Baron's going to play 4 games on an OTK list. Can he win one? I mean, it feels like an absolute sure thing.
Yep.
Um,
But now, but our predictions were wrong. Well, I'll say your prediction was wrong. You said 3-5. I said 4-5.
in fairness, you did cop out because you wanted to be different. But yes, I mean, I eat it. I said it on. I
Yep.
said it on the video. I'm
But
prepared for this.
Bubbles
We
now
are not
has
going to see it.
self damage with no healing as his last deck. He has 2 chances on self damage with no healing against
I mean,
Exile and
yeah,
Push OTK.
yeah. At this point, Bubbles has to beat both Exile and Push OTK. Or one of, sorry. And neither of these are matchups he really loves on this self damage list, but it is an interesting list.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely if he's just able to get down like the T-35 and then like an SU on turn 2
Hmm.
and then 3, he's able to put out a ton of damage really quickly. And Exile can sometimes just have absolutely dead hands where you're not doing anything
Oh yeah.
until turn 3. Um, and also just if the self-damage player hits like triple Red Dawn and then slams down a 6/6 on like turn 3, Exile just can't do anything. Um,
No, there's you don't have an answer. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is. I mean, I would say the chances of us seeing Game 9 are not small right now. Um,
And maybe Twitch chat do something that we didn't, with Twitch chat favoring Bubbles to win. And we saw the series get tied up after that. However, then went back to. It is now back into Bubbles' favor. We've seen Baron winning for two rounds. Now Bubbles is winning for 2 rounds. Are we going to tie it back and then go into Game 9, hopefully? Um, Now, before we got into Game 8 and find out what is going to happen, let's do some more giveaways. Let's pull another. You know what? Let's pull another 150 gold giveaway, and it is going to be going to Spellbreaker77. So congratulations on that. And let's pull one more 150 gold giveaway. It's going to Ketchup Pap 56. So congratulations to both of you. And now let's let the players know that we are ready for Game 8.
Yeah, I'm certainly ready for this because this is whatever whichever list Baron brings, this is going to be dramatic. Um, I think if I'm Baron, I probably bring Exile right now.
Yeah, that would be a very. I think this push might have a slightly better chance of winning, but also I've lost 4 games on the deck.
Of course, yeah. I mean, this is my thing. Is I'm like, it's got it's sitting there, and I know. No, he's sticking with his push guns.
And
So
if Bubbles wins this, it will mean um that Baron lost all 5 games of the grand finals
games
on push OTK.
PK.
And the KV in the hand of Innocent Bubbles is going to cause some serious problems. Um,
Yeah, Bubbles is happy to hold on to that and wait for credit 6 because that thing is hell for Baron's deck.
Keeping back the sickles, I really like this. Because it's going to work out really well for him, because now he can double sickle this T80, both
Yeah,
players taking the 2 damage. However, Baron drawing the 2 cards.
yeah,
And double Red Dawn in the hand already. If he finds a push,
yeah.
triple Red Dawn now. Just one push, he can burst 12.
Yep. And he knows that Bubbles is likely to do some of the work for him. Um,
I mean, do you want to get the engineers down immediately? The question is, do you want to give your opponent the draw? He can't double draw on the recon by simply unit trading. But I
no.
still prefer the 2/5. The 10th guards um, is the name of the card. He's looking at Red Dawning the 456th. I am not a fan of this. I feel like there's going to be better targets that you need to remove, such as the SU. And also,
Yeah,
I'd like just holding on to them, because at any point you find a push, suddenly you're threatening lethal from
yeah,
a very losing game state. However, he's going to take out the 456th, and that's going to ruin Bubbles' immediate curve here, because he essentially has nothing. He has to Winter Warfare for
yeah.
card drop, most likely.
Chooses instead to put a From the People in hand.
Yep, Bubbles very
Um,
aware of his health total.
yep.
Not wanting to take any unnecessary self damage this game.
I like the engineers here. I do. Now the 2/5 comes down, so now Baron's setting out his store a little bit. The SU, as you called it earlier, that SU is a very tempting target if it comes down.
And Bubbles down to 15.
Bean? Baron finds so he's got 2 Glamour Boys in hand, which is pretty solid actually. I mean, he's this is a waiting game for Baron. He knows he's probably going to be in range once he can find his push, but he's also got to think about how much does he want to give Bubbles draw. But I mean, Bubbles is going to get the draw either way. Pushing up the Bryansk gives him space now to really start getting those Glamour Boys out, I think. I like the Yak
Yeah,
because Baron's saying I need to find my combo pieces.
Bubbles might just take out this Yak 7 immediately. Could play down 34th guards. I mean, you don't really want to trade with the Bryansk here. So yeah, he's
Yeah.
going to get out the
No,
34th
I
guards.
like taking out the Yak because anything that denies your opponent draw. Um, Unfortunately, Baron's now top decked enemy contact, which is actually a big play. Fortification's not small either. That's a card you like to see right now if you're Baron. I like this, the aggressive use of your Bryansk because you get
Ooh.
HQ defense and remove a big threat. The SU 100's good for bubbles, but there's a guard, which is not great.
Yeah, you just play down the KV.
Yeah.
And Baron, I feel like I haven't seen Baron draw Depths of Winter across the 5 games he's now played on this
It
deck.
does feel like Depths of Winter is a weighted card in Baron's deck
He
right
he
now.
did find it at the very last turn where he was dead on board either way against the Alpine. And this isn't a situation where you would immediately slam Depths of Winter if you had it, but he's definitely going to want it in hand for the option.
Yeah.
Um,
I think I like the Glamour Boys here. The guard plus the HQ defense I think is stronger than the Corson.
yeah,
You're
there's
not
also
immediate You've got no immediate answer to the KV, so ultimately, what you need to do is survive long enough to find. Really, two pushes will do the job right now if he can just find his two pushes.
I think the thought process behind considering Corson is the 5 attack. If this 34th Guides gets pushed up, you can hit into it and sickle to just clear it off the board. There is a single stand together in Bubbles' deck, which Baron is probably sitting here praying is not in his hand, because that will make
Mm-hmm.
getting rid of the board essentially impossible without picking up picking up the only copy of Depths of Winter.
Yeah. The new effect on the KV2, allowing its heavy armor to reduce orders, is huge. Um,
And if your Bubbles, I think you're fine taking a little bit more, because 15 means that you are already dead to Red Dawn push push.
yeah,
Um, and your opponent hasn't killed you, so you're pretty confident your opponent doesn't have double push in hand, or they probably wouldn't have thrown out the Red Dawn
yeah.
earlier in the game.
Baron does have the option of making a very awkward board state for Bubbles to deal with. It's just he has to pick the flavour of awkward. I do like the Corson now because the threat is there.
And yeah,
T35 is
this
not
is
great for
just
Bubbles.
an awful situation if you're Bubbles, because you, the T35s, if you play them, they have to be traded out the next turn, and that's still 1 damage to yourself for 2 damage to
Yeah.
a unit, essentially. And
Yep.
this KV's doing great work, but your opponent's 33. They're not
Yeah.
like. There's no fears. The SU-100 is going to come out to just take out this Corson
Which
immediately.
I like. Um, Now that stiff upper lip could be huge. Draw is.
I mean, I think you just buy the sword here. You're taking a ton of damage, but you could
I mean,
trade
the
out.
thing is, you're taking a ton of damage regardless to buy the sword, and it's not like you're planning on answering that KV right now.
I mean, I would love to see buy the sword first. You're
Yeah,
not you're
I'm
not
not
worried
sure
about
the
overdraw.
Yeah. Oh no. Would you? Well, okay, so we're gonna throw the go. But that is quite conservative from Baron, actually,
And
choosing not to go ham on the buy the sword.
push
But
is
this
now
is
lethal.
far from conservative from Bubbles.
Yep, push is just lethal at any point this game. Baron can even draw for it with buy the sword. And has 5 opportunities to find it.
I was gonna
Um,
say, I mean, do you just do it? I mean, you draw it, you win.
he goes for it and manages to not find any push and is now down to 19 health. He can still
You can't write this.
he
This
can
is
still sickle.
insane.
He can sickle. He even has 2
Sickle, yeah.
draws. He can sickle. He can enemy spotted. Um, so he has 2 more draws for one of his 2 pushes.
I mean, he knows they're in there. It's a winter warfare. Yay. Um. Oh, Baron.
I mean, your
Oh, I do
opponent's
feel for you.
probably not playing units anymore. They don't have 2
No.
cards in hand, and they have plenty on the board. I think I would have liked to see the enemy spotted on the
Yeah,
SU
I.
before playing the guard, just for that 1 extra opportunity for push. Not that it really matters. The Corson top deck is too good not to play. It will trigger aerial reconnaissance, and now Baron once again is going to have another round of draws for the push.
Yep. I mean, right now, Baron is just digging for 1 copy of Push, chat. That's all Baron needs to say.
And he could even kill this KV before going for the draws.
Yeah. Which is the smart move, in my opinion. I really think you think about doing that.
I mean, you're essentially guaranteed, right?
I mean, mathematically, let's not
There's
use the
10
G word.
cards. There's 10 cards in his deck.
Oh my god!
Surely he is able to draw 10 cards and still push his opponent this turn. I mean, you have to take out KV. You're getting to the point where you might just die.
Yeah, I mean, he's going all in for. There's the push.
And he can just play it, win this turn.
Yeah.
And he finally found it.
He,
Cut them
this, by the way, chat is
very
Baron
close.
checking his maths, making sure that he's not gone mad, but good lord, Baron needed a serious shovel to find that one copy of Push.
And I mean, we've seen him struggle to get any wins on this deck, losing 4 times in a row. This is like it finally got a win, but like its win felt like more of a loss than some of the actual losses. Like,
Losses, yeah.
and
That's more exhausting than the games you lost on that deck, and we are rolling into game 9, but that was insane.
and remember when Baron missed lethal in game 2 of this series and said,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, what are the odds that like this is gonna come back and haunt him?" I think it is safe to say that it has come back and haunted him, win or lose in this game 9. But we are going to the
Game
legendary
9.
game 9 of the grand finals. It is going to be Exile Air versus no healing self damage. I am so excited for this. At this point, anything can happen. The cards have shown that they're willing to say, you know what, screw matchups, screw lineups decisions, screw odds. We're just gonna
I
give you
mean,
the
I was going to
wackiest
say,
hands.
at this point, the gods of cards have literally leaned down over Baron and gone, screw mathematics for even the win that he got. It's just insane. But this is, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better finals to an amazing tournament. We're going to game 9 with two of the most extraordinary players. We're going to see a really interesting set of matchups because these are both very much a cap over the wall because I believe I can climb it decks. Neither of these decks is subtle. Neither of these decks is doing anything tricksy. These decks are just all about hitting your opponent really hard.
And
Um,
what I absolutely love about this is if you bring Exile game 1 of this series, you're not going to be thinking that much. Like, obviously, Baron's a very, very good player, and he's playing in a tournament. He wants to win. He's going to be playing well. But you bring Exile in game 1, and you do your pretty standard mulligan. You're looking for the PZL to reduce the cost. You're looking for some early copies of the French plane. Maybe keep a hammer home if you have a good hand. Um, However, game 9, you are going to be spending so much time on this mulligan because you only have
yeah.
one left. This is your last mulligan of the tournament. Is it going to be perfect enough? How much risk are you willing to take? How much are you thinking about your opponent's ability to have Red Dawn to take out something early? Maybe double Sickle if you're starting second and you want to go for a PZL. What are they going to be able to cheat out? What if they play a T80? What is your answer going to be to that? Is it just simply going to be to play down a plane and let them get the trade? Maybe they get a
Mm,
456 value. And then on Bubbles' side, you're thinking, how defensive do I want to be? Do I want to keep a ton of removal in case they have a very strong opener? Do I want to keep like a T80 in an opening hand? What if they just pop off if they're going first? Um,
yeah.
there's they are going to both be overthinking this mulligan so much more than they would if they had these same decks, same matchup in game 1, game
If one,
3,
yeah.
game 5 of this tournament even, because it is all coming down to this. And before we get into the grand finals, let's do another 150 gold giveaway, which will be going to W96. Um, so congratulations, W, on the 150 gold, and let's do a 300 gold giveaway right before the grand finale, which will be going to none other than our very own Intradiction. So congratulations, Intradiction, on 300 gold.
Hey, intro.
And there will be giveaways after the finals, so stick around. And also, this is the grand final, so you better be watching this if you're going to watch any game. Now let's just
This
set
is the
up
one.
spectator mode and let the players know um, when we are ready to go. And yeah, at this point, there's no conversations about what deck you want to bring. Both players know exactly the deck that they're going to be playing against. They have no decisions on what to bring. And it's also, open lineup. And this is sort of where the open decks can become a bit of a curse, because you might start overthinking, like, my opponent has no healing. What if I just start, like, pressuring face? Do I keep Sea Patrol? Like, do I just
Yeah.
start keeping burn and try to burn him out from like 10?
Yeah, I
um,
mean, this is seriously, particularly as an exile player, if you're playing into a self-damage list, and it hasn't happened to me often, you are often thinking, how much do I just hold on to my Sea Patrol? Because it can be clutch.
yeah, and if you're playing on ladder, you're thinking, well, they might have island defense, they might have like an early engineers that can like heal them out. I need to win on board, but knowing your opponent has no healing, that might affect your
Yeah.
judgment. Um, and here we go into our finals. PZL going first. That's what you want to see.
Yeah. The resourcefulness you don't care about. The Hammer Home is a hard thought here because it is such a strong card, but how much do you believe
I think if I'm Baron,
you'll.
I'm keeping Hammer home. I feel like if you get to play that card at any point in this game, your odds of winning go up by probably 15%. Um,
Oh, I tend to agree, yeah.
However, you
It,
have the PZL, and it's possible to whiff on PZL. It's possible to have PZL on one into like no real follow-ups, and that might be what's going to happen.
yeah, that said, I mean, in this matchup, I don't mind seeing two copies of the Parachute Regiment because you know they're going to eat the sickles anyway. Um,
I'm a little curious why he started with the Parachute Brigade, um, knowing that his opponent's essentially only turn
yeah.
one play is Sickle. Um, 456 comes out now, which means the Mobilize is going to grow on this guy. Another PCL.
Oh, double
All the
PZL,
exile
so
payoff, none of the exile.
style. That said, it does mean when you do see that exile, it will snowball like mad.
And thinking about whether
I
to
also
push up or not, chooses against it.
I like not pushing up. I don't think you need to in this matchup.
SU comes out, Guard comes up, Lysander. He can hammer home the Lysander this turn.
And yeah,
And that's gonna actually threaten a lot of damage.
I've done this on a regular basis playing Exile, which, as I know you've noted,
And
I do play quite a lot of. Hammer Home onto Lysander is not actually a bad play because not only does it give you functional damage, you're into a deck that you know has got plenty of cards that it wants to play, and those known card plays are very scary.
I mean,
Um,
surely you just
uh,
play out your entire hand here and say you have no answers. Um,
Yeah, I mean, you hold up the countermeasure, you drop the Lysander, hammer home, push up the para, and just go, let's see.
and looking
Um,
from Bubbles, because I imagine that's what we're going to see from Baron here.
yeah,
From Bubbles' point of view, he could just immediately course him, and
yeah.
just say, you know what, you can't get through a 5/7. Um, Baron,
Aaron is actually considering an alternate line here.
oh, he's pushed the PZL. He doesn't even play Lysander because he doesn't want the pings on the 456th. I guess he's
Yeah,
worried 456 killing him much faster than these PZLs will kill Bubbles.
yeah.
However, if you Bubbles, like you can push up, you can. I mean, at this point, you got to be pretty aware that there's probably a countermeasure. Um,
Yeah.
not through Lysander,
Very.
and
This is not really what you want to see because now Baron is set up in a position whereby Bubbles has got that guard set up that is just going to continue to grow, and that can get out of hand very quickly.
yeah, Baron being
Um,
punished pretty hard for not going for it last turn.
yeah.
Goes for it here. 2/3/4s. Intel on his opponent's hand. Sees Winter Warfare. Sees Corson.
I mean, if you're Bubbles, do you just put Corson down here and just say answer it?
Yeah, you might just play Corson and push up a 5/6 to the front line.
Yeah, and just be like, or you could do this. I mean, with Lysander on board, that's equally devastating. I mean,
Yeah.
you can push up one of the guards that continues to grow. It's going to protect your tanks. Um,
Goes for the
Or you
ping.
can just, I mean, you can also just sit back and say, look, you're not going to find a way through this.
And the T-35 triggers um, as well, so that's going to be another round of buffs. Doesn't go for the 34th, wants to trade out.
I mean, you've got to play the battle because you've got to get some value off it. You know you're going to have to trade out the tank in the front line because you can't just let it sit there. Um,
And this, unfortunately does not hit the 34th on the Exile. I would have loved to see that. At this point, Bubbles takes 3 damage um, every time he plays an Intel card.
yeah,
So we'll likely not see any Intel cards unless it's winning him
cards
the game when
played,
he
yeah.
plays it.
Um, but that 6/6 body is very hard to answer. I do like this, the Corson drop here because now
if you're Baron, you see Stand Together Winter Warfare counteroffensive
warfare
in your opponent's hand.
and um this is where Intel is not actually helping you. This is Intel is making you sad.
I think you just have to
Uh,
pass and hope Bubbles accidentally kills himself.
yeah,
Hit
I
face for
mean,
1 and then hope that he goes for Stand Together Winter Warfare counteroffensive and forgets that he will die.
yeah. This is not the way Baron would have liked to see this deck go. Um, this is very much the way Bubbles would have liked to have seen his deck go. He's in an incredibly commanding position here, and I really don't see a way out for Baron. As you say, I mean, it really your opponent kind of has to misplay.
Yeah, the
This is
the
very,
issue I
very
have with
tough.
trading is you see that you are dead on board if you don't trade, but you also see that you have a 0% chance of winning if you do trade. And if
Yeah,
you don't trade, there's a possibility that Bubbles somehow accidentally kills himself.
yeah.
Whereas if you do trade, there is literally no way Bubbles can lose this game short of his PC crashing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, the issue here is that this is just game and oh,
It goes for the Winter Warfare
there,
counteroffensive.
massive, huge swing. Oh look, hammer home. Yay!
And
Um,
that was shockingly close, but it, just not quite able to get across the line. Um,
yeah,
I mean, let's be honest, that was a very awful hand for Baron. In the finals, definitely not the hand he wants to see, but that's sometimes what happens with Exile. That's the
yeah,
risk of running Exile is sometimes you're going to get a terrible hand, but that is going to be it for the grand finals. That is going to be Bubbles winning 5-4 over Baron von Glower. Innocent Bubbles being crowned the champion of the King's Cup 2 tournament. Very, very close game. Went to game 9. At the
nine.
very least, I think Baron can be glad that he sort of maybe reclaimed some of his honor after the brutal loss in the week 3 game against Bubbles. This one, you definitely can't say Baron did not try his hardest. And it just comes down to that game 2 missed lethal. I think that's
Yeah,
going to haunt Baron until the rest of his days. Um,
just unbelievable stuff. I mean, yeah, chat proving yourselves to be way smarter than we are. But I mean, that was just incredible play from both players. I'm privileged to have watched that. I'm privileged to have been a part of this entire thing, and this was legitimately amazing. I mean, great win for Bubbles. Obviously, very happy for my fellow Brit. I, for once, very happy to be proven wrong. But yeah, I think that was just amazing. It was really incredible.
I'm just going to quickly see if there's a possibility of getting a quick interview with Bubbles, but before we get to that, I have 2 final codes to give away: an 150 gold code and a with 300 gold code. So big thanks to everybody for watching through this entire project. All 3 weeks here in the finals now, and huge thank to all of the casters for helping me with this. Particularly Bear, you have been here far more times than I can be reasonably expected. But you were always there, able to help out, even at the last second, needing to step in to join a cast. And a huge round of applause to our players for putting in the time, work on deck lists, submit decks on time, be there, put up with us analyzing decks for an hour. Week after week, and a huge round of applause to Innocent Bubbles for his victory. But now let's pull the final giveaways of this entire
Let's
project.
do this.
150 gold will be going to Verzik Vither. So congratulations. And the final 300 gold will be going over to Smart R Play. So congratulations to you guys, and congratulations to everybody. Um, and we'll be getting Bubbles in here in just
Oh,
one
fantastic!
second.
Yeah.
All right, Bubbles, you are here on stream. Congratulations on winning. Very close one. What are your just initial thoughts right now after this slog of a set?
Yeah, I was excited that I'd won $50, but then I realized they were Canadian dollars.
You will also be
Um,
getting the watch.
yes, I sent you a message about that, which is definitely pretty cool, pretty exciting. But I mean, I'm more just here because I like playing against people. I like playing against my friends. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was fun to go to game 9 against Baron. I think I definitely made quite a few mistakes. But I think that happens when you're in a best of 9. I
I
think,
think legitimate. Yeah.
yeah, I would like to give a slight middle finger to J King for making us play a best of 9. But we survived. We survived. I do want to say of my Alpine deck, I don't know what Kermac was doing in there. I saw him in my hand. I was like, activate a countermeasure. I ain't got no countermeasures. So I maybe he was just there to show off the rarity a little bit because he's a special, instead of a standard or a limited. So just showing off the bling a little bit. But yeah, it was a good time. I had fun. When do you want me to give you the address now for you to send me the crown, or when does it? How does that work?
Yes, I think you should dox yourself live on stream. No, so how did you feel about your lineup after decks were published? You see the crow mark in your lineup, realize that mistakes may have been made.
I didn't see that in my lineup until it was in my hand.
Lord.
Because
Like,
so for some,
legitimately.
it's genuine. So for some context, right? Deck submission was Monday. I was busy all week, so I had to do it on the weekend. And I know, like, Birdo and Baron found the deck building process fairly straightforward. They were like, well, we just picked the best decks and built those.
Mm-hmm.
But I found it very difficult. I spent a long time building all my decks. It's because the whole thing of not having the same card twice, I found that really restrictive, which I liked. I found it interesting and I liked the restriction. But it meant I spent a long time considering my decks and
Yeah.
going over different lineups and all of this. And I'd built 4 decks I was really happy with. I was really happy with my 4 decks. And then I tried to build the 5th deck. And I realized it would have to be German. I had to build a German deck because I just didn't have the cards to build another deck I was happy with. And the deck which overlapped the least with all my other decks was Alpine. So I was like, okay, it's got to be Alpine. So I built Alpine, submitted it with Alpine. But at that point, it was probably about 3 in the morning. And I submitted them. I was like, that's sorted. I don't need to worry about it. I'll leave them now and I'll come back to it on the day of the tournament. So I got here on the day of the tournament. All my decks are ready. I'm ready to play. And then that is the first time I had touched the Alpine deck since 3 in the morning on the time I submitted it. So I hadn't had an opportunity to look at it and go, what the hell is Kermac doing here?
Yeah, that definitely stood out to us when we were going over the decks. Just well, he ran Kermark in his last deck in the Britain
Yeah.
German air with the countermeasures. There's no
Yeah, we
countermeasures
had
in
a
this
whole
deck.
conversation about was there an iteration of this deck that was running countermeasures?
No, it was just 3 in the morning, and it was my fifth deck. And
Yeah.
I mean, I
I mean,
find
I
I
feel
find
you.
deck building very difficult and intensive. I don't like to bring the first versions of decks. I don't
Mhm.
like to bring the first decks which come to mind. And I must have just searched Alpine and put in a bunch of Alpine things. Because I remember, so on the 3K slot, normally you have the 13th Gebirgsjäger and the 136 Gebirgsjäger.
Mhm.
One of them has better default stats and one of them grows better. So, what I like to do in Alpine is I like to take a balance of the two because it
Mhm.
gives you a little bit of versatility. If you need stats on the board straight away, you can put down the 4-3, which just has a better stat line, and this lets you deal with the board or rush down your opponents better. But then you also have this slower one which grows better, and this is nicer for a sort of long slow burn. So I like to do like 3 and 3 or something. Um, and then Kermac, I don't know why it was in there because I'd considered these 3K slots so carefully. I must have just overlooked it. But at the end of the day, it is just one attack less than the other one. So it's not a huge difference. And generally on Alpine, one attack isn't a big deal because you're
Yeah.
normally either smashing your opponent for a huge amount of health or you're just stuck on board and you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we did. I think we did both of us. When we were looking at the decks, we did comment that I mean, legitimately, so to a certain extent, it is still a decent set of stats, and that might just have been the logic. I mean, obviously, we now know it wasn't, but I mean, it's not like it's not a
Oh,
major regret having it in there. It's still a decent body.
if I didn't have access to other 3K options, I would run Kermac just for 3K 3-3 Alpine. I think it's
Yeah.
acceptable as a unit. I just think there were better options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we were doing our predictions, Bale predicted a Baron 5-3 victory. I also predicted a 5-3 victory, but to be different, I predicted a Baron 5-4 victory. Chat had your back, though. We ran a poll after game number 5, I believe.
Yeah.
And chat voted, I believe, like 65% in your favor that they thought you were going to win. And you know what? You ended up proving chat right. So, one, you should thank your fans for their support, and two, there's actually some questions coming in from chat. W wants to know what comes next for the King's Cup champion, and do you have any plans to ever climb above rank 20?
I don't know if I have
Apparently,
plans to climb above rank 20. And what's next for me, I think, is getting a job. An actual job, a proper job. So I've been in cards competitive since the beginning, really. I mean, I
Mhm.
missed the first Worlds because I just missed it. I wasn't there, wasn't playing cards. But I was climbing ladder before the OCC was a thing, as were quite a few other competitors that are still around. I know, James, you've been climbing before it was a thing, and quite a few other people have been. So I've been here since the start of the competitive scene as it is today. I've been here since it started. I've watched it grow. You know, when we started casting, we were volunteers. We were just doing it because it's what we wanted to do. I've been here through multiple community events. You know, we've got the Spoos things. We had the Ride Deck events. I've been here for a lot of it, and I now, I mean, it's been like 3 or 4 years, guys, and it's been great. I've had a lot of fun. It's given me a lot of opportunities. I've traveled the world because of it. I've got new friends who I hope to have outside of cards for a long time, but I don't have much motivation to keep going because I feel like I've done everything I wanted to do.
Mhm.
You know, I've won an OCC. I believe I've won a season. I've, you know, been around for a while. I've proven myself. I don't have much left in cards that I want to do. And a lot of people, or I say, look, a couple people have asked me, you know, are you interested in this card game? Are you interested in playing this CCG? The truth is, I'm not so interested in esports anymore. I never was interested in esports. I stumbled into it. It just happened. And I mean, it's not like a retirement announcement. I'm ranked 20. That's been like 4 months of me not playing the game. it's just I'm moving on with my life. So I don't think there is much more for the King's Cup King. If James invites me back in the next 3-4 years when he does the next one, then maybe I'll show up for that.
Defend your title.
Yeah, I am experimenting with Haze. Haze is a community member a lot of people know. We're experimenting with a cool game mode that's not been done before. So I might host something with that, get a few people involved. But that would be purely for my own entertainment and joy rather than trying to be a member of the community. I'm sort of just doing my own thing now.
All right. Well, you know what? You've been a staple of the cards community for the 4 years you've been here. I mean, you have a ton of fans, and you've made a ton of friends here. So, you know what? You'll always have a place here, forever, whenever you want to return to do, small events, host your thing you're doing with Hayes. I'm very excited about that. I don't know how secretive that is, but I'm very excited for that. But yeah, thank you very much for participating in this tournament. I know that when I asked you, you had already started to take that step back, but you agreed and you put in the hours. You've made the decks, submitted. You submitted 40 different decks over the 4 weeks.
Oh, jeez. I mean, I
Maybe
do want to
don't
say,
remind
like,
him.
I
That's fine.
appreciate
20 decks.
I appreciate everyone's support and love. People have made me feel very welcomed in the community, and I've done my best to extend that welcoming sort of feeling to as many people as I can. So I appreciate people's love and support. And it's not like I'm like, fuck cards, fuck you guys, fuck this, I'm out of here. Don't clip that out of context.
We already have.
It's just that, yeah, it's just life. You only want to do something for so long.
Yeah, Baron's already got the
100%.
clip.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I mean, amazing performance, fantastic win. I mean, obviously, if you're ever up north, I'll buy you a beer. What a fantastic way to do it. I will say, Red Sun did in fact get his message highlighted. Wants to know if you're single.
I'm not just single, Red. I'm depressingly single. Like, everyone looks at me and they're like, yeah, that's kind of sad. That's the sort of aura I'm giving with my singularity.
All right. Well, before this interview gets too far off the rails, because this does have to be uploaded. Yeah. Before we start talking too much about Bubbles' love life, thank you very much for participating in the whole event, and thank you very much for joining in for the interview. And yeah, I think we will leave it there with you.
No, thank you for having me.
If you have anything you want to plug while you're here, feel free.
I think, I don't know if it's out yet, but I think at some point in the next few days, Red Sun might be uploading his next YouTube video. He does like his monthly field marshal grind. I know he puts a lot of work into them, and he puts a lot of energy into them. And because they're short videos, they're like 2 or 3 minutes long, the YouTube algorithm doesn't pick them up as much as it does other content. YouTube likes to pick up things which are at least 10 to 20 minutes long. So if you don't already watch those every month, please go and check out Red Sun's channel, because the YouTube algorithm is not giving him his fair due to the amount of work and the high quality content he's putting out. So go check that out.
Yeah, very good shout out to Red Sun, who also joined us as a caster earlier on in this event. The most edited cards videos, like the most high effort edited cards videos that I've ever seen. They look awesome. They're really, really funny. And yeah, you get to see some cool games while you're at it. So yeah, check out Red Sun. Check out his backlog if you haven't seen it before. Subscribe if you haven't. And thank you very much for joining us, Bubbles.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Alrighty, well, that is going to be it from us too. Bear, do you have any final words you want to say? Any plugs you want to plug? Any wisdom you want to give about this whole event?
I mean, I'm not gonna plug much. Everyone knows where I am. You can find me. I've been plugged plenty on this. Mostly, it's just been a pleasure to be part of this. I think more and more seeing community tournaments is great, and I hope this also shows some demonstration eventually to 1939 too about the legitimate fun that can be had with different formats, and the way that you can challenge some players to really think differently. My biggest shout out in all of this is honestly to chat. Like, for every stream that I've been on or around from, you guys have been amazing. You're always, as a community, amazing. I never lack for people when I'm streaming, even when I'm not having a good day. And a biggest shout out of all, though, is genuinely to James, to J King. Like, coming up with this, putting the hours in to make this happen is not small. And I think legitimately you can call this an incredible success. I mean, Game 9 final between two players who've got the storied history of their last game. Just incredible. This has been fantastic, and I hope everyone else has enjoyed it as much as I have.
Well, thank you very much for that. Yeah, it's been been rough. You know, when I initially announced it and set the first dates, there ended up being far more effort needed to be put in on a regular basis to get things ready. With your spectator mode, the decks, the various screens. So that took quite some time to prepare. And then battling through technical issues. Even today, the audio issue at the beginning of the stream. I'm also still recovering from what is possibly my third round of COVID. So that's fun. If I have been slightly lower energy than usual, if my throat sounds slightly weird, that's why. But yeah, I suppose I will now give out some shout outs. Huge shout out to my girlfriend, known as JQueen7 in the community. She helped out with basically all of the screens you have seen, anything that required any amount of creativity in design. The screen that's up on stream right now, all of these screens were designed by her. So big thanks to her. Would be much uglier stream without her. And Baron is shouting out Team Heavy in the chat, so I will give a link to the Team Heavy YouTube channel as well. You'll see content from Baron, Corn Guy, Thanatron, some World Championship 2023 exclusive content on there that's quite amusing. I should go check it out. They have a great sense of humor. But enough rambling, enough shoutouts. That is going to be it. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching, and we will catch you all in the next one.